Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description. This Captain Wears Red by OP Wonders. Luffy's finally embarked on his own adventure. With his past weighing heavy on his shoulders, he'll move forward towards his dream of becoming Pirate King. He'll gather a crew that rivals Whitebeard's and show all those Marines who held him captive for so long what happens when you mess with a D. OP Luffy X, harem I don't own anything. Adios.
No matter how incredible he was in the past, he's now a mere cook. It's easy to blow his brains out. You want to save this man, right, Sanji-san? Please, leave the ship without a fight. I don't want to kill you. Jin told Sanji, looking to the blonde as he held the gun to Zeph's head. Luffy frowned, because despite Jin's calm, confident exterior, Luffy could feel that the man was desperate and his attempts to get Sanji to leave could feel the pirate's desire to not harm Sanji. Leave the ship? No way, Sanji said as he lit a new cigarette and put it in his mouth. Jin's eyes widened at the exclamation, obviously not having expected that response. Man, do you look stupid, you damn geezer. If you're like that, you can't set a good example for the fighting cooks. Sanji said nonchalantly, obviously not worried about the gun pointed at the owner. HMPH, I don't need a lecture from a little brat. Zeph replied, equally unfazed. Where do you get off calling me, little brat, you damn bastard? Quit treating me like a kid already, Sanji yelled out in anger, his previous calm demeanor gone now. Damn that Sanji. He's not gonna forsake the owner, is he? The chefs murmured amongst themselves from where they watched with wide, worried eyes. Jin, point that gun at me. Back was the calm as Sanji straightened, looking up to Jin rather than the owner as he spoke. Feeling his conviction, Luffy's eyes widened in disbelief. Are you stupid? You'll die, Luffy told him with wide eyes, wondering what Sanji hoped to gain out of this new plan of his. Maybe, Sanji said with a small shrug. Sanji-san. Why? Jin asked in disbelief, still holding the gun firmly towards Zeph's head. If you want to die so bad, I'll kill you in a refined way. Don't move if you don't want your owner's head blown off. Pearl, who was now beginning to stand up again from behind Sanji and Luffy, spoke with a menacing glare. The murderous intent coming from the man was strong and Luffy knew that he had no hesitation in hurting Sanji like Jin had. The absolutely natural Pearl. Surprise! Without moving an inch, Sanji stood still as Pearl swung his shield down into Sanji's face, knocking the chef back towards the railing. Sanji, why aren't you dodging? Luffy asked in worry after watching the man go flying. He liked Sanji, he wanted him to be his chef, so to see him doing nothing to defend himself both confused and worried Luffy. If I did, that damn underling would pull the trigger, Sanji explained as he sat up, head hanging as he spoke. Realizing the blonde's reasoning, the tension in Luffy slackened, accepting the answer with a small grin of pride. Even though Luffy knew that Jin wouldn't hurt Zeph, Sanji didn't know that, so it made sense now as to why the cook hadn't defended himself. Why? If you leave this restaurant, everyone's life will be saved. It's a no-brainer, isn't it? Jin asked with wide eyes, still trying to understand Sanji's motives. This restaurant is that damn geezer's treasure, Sanji all but growled as he looked up enough to glare at Jin, blood falling from the corner of his mouth. I took everything away from that damn geezer. His power. His dream. So, I don't want that damn geezer to lose anything else, Sanji exclaimed as he stood back up. Sanji! Watch out! Patty shouted, everyone noticing at once that Pearl was right behind the blonde again, arms outstretched in preparation for another attack. Pearl! Symbols! Pearl shouted, swinging both of his hand shields and smashing them on either side of Sanji's head. Blood spurted out as the blonde screamed out from getting hit by the attack, and when Pearl removed his hands, Sanji fell forward back onto the deck. There was a moment of silence as they all watched him fall, and a sudden wave of strong emotions from the chef surprised Luffy. Despair, desperation, determination, and even anger and frustration. Sanji was being filled with one strong emotion after another. He lay unmoving for a second, but eventually his hand clenched into a fist and he spoke, face still on the deck. That damn geezer gave up his leg so that I could live. Sanji started, the chef's eyes bugging out at that new revelation, and based on their feelings and reactions, Luffy could tell they hadn't known that before. I can't repay the damn geezer for his kindness unless I risk my life for him too. Struggling to stand up, Sanji screamed out the words with a strong conviction. Luffy was watching, standing beside Pearl with a blank face, taking in as much information as he could. Why do you get up, Sanji-san? Jin asked, his surprise turning to shock. In order for this place to be a restaurant as long as possible, he answered with a grin. That idiot. Is he trying to get killed? Patty asked angrily, Luffy feeling that the anger stemmed from the man's worry. Speaking of, Luffy could feel his own anger starting to rise again. You damn brat. Zeph grumbled to Sanji. Huh? That's such a refined line. But this restaurant will be closed now and it will change into a pirate ship. At Pearl's words, Luffy finally had enough. And in a split second he was stretching his leg high up into the air, surprising everyone once again. "Stop it, you idiot! Keep your hands off of them," Sanji shouted at Luffy, and like with Patty, despite the anger he showed on his face, Luffy could feel the worry welling inside of him. "What's he trying to do?" a chef asked in a mixture of worry and fear as they all watched Luffy's foot fly so high into the air, they couldn't even see it anymore. "Gum gum. Battle axe," Luffy shouted, a look of rage on his face as he sent his foot flying back towards the ground. Without a hint of hesitation, Luffy let his foot smash the entire deck that they were standing on into pieces, a tower of water forming as a result and raining water down on everyone as they watched with dropped jaws. "The fin's been smashed," someone yelled in realization. The fin that had provided plenty of room for everyone to stand on was now splintered into multiple sections, some smaller than others. With a grin and his eyes shadowed by his hat, Luffy stood up straighter. "Is he trying to destroy the ship? Jin, blow Zeph's brain out," Krieg ordered angrily. At the order, Jin stiffened, not immediately moving to follow through with it, and once again, that unwillingness to cause both the owner and Sanji harm was back. "Do it now," Krieg demanded once he saw this. "But he saved our lives by giving us 100 meals." Obviously, this was not what Krieg wanted to hear, and his anger only worsened as a result. "Jin, you son of a bitch," Krieg roared. "Hey," Luffy suddenly said, voice void of any emotion he was currently feeling. "I didn't really attack you guys or anything. I only broke the fin," Luffy stated with a small frown as he turned to look over his shoulder at Krieg, who was practically exploding with rage. "Oi, 11,097. What do you think you're doing?" Sanji asked in a rage of his own. The blonde was standing up on the uneven rocky deck and glaring towards Luffy, despite knowing Luffy was a much stronger opponent. "I'll sink it," Luffy said simply, face still void of emotion. "What?" Sanji asked almost breathlessly, his one visible eye widening at the words. "I'll sink this ship." Everyone stared at Luffy in disbelief, chef and pirate alike. "That ain't funny," one of the Kriegs yelled. Sanji, meanwhile, had marched over to Luffy, having been on the same section of deck as him. "I was wondering how you'd explain that. Are you crazy, you damn bastard?" Sanji asked as he grabbed Luffy by the front of his vest, pulling him up slightly off the ground. "If I destroy the ship, there'll be no reason for them to attack," Luffy told him, still unfazed by the roughness of Sanji pulling on his vest. "What?" Jin asked, still managing to have held the gun to Zeph this entire time. "What do you know? What do you know about the significance of kindness I received? What do you know about this restaurant?" Sanji demanded as he got closer to Luffy's face, not curinger than him or not. "So you're gonna die for the restaurant? Are you stupid or something?" Luffy asked now, some irritation finally showing on his face as he asked the question. "What did you say?" In one swift movement, Luffy slapped Sanji's hand off his vest and reached out, grabbing Sanji by the front of his suit now and pulling him close like the chef had done to him only seconds ago. "Dying isn't something you should do to repay kindness. That's not what he saved you for, being given life and yet dying is something that a weakling would do," Luffy yelled, irritation turning to full-blown anger as he glared at Sanji, the two practically touching foreheads with how close they were. Luffy couldn't help but think of Whitebeard as he said his words, of Shanks and Garp, all of them having looked for Ace, Sabo, and Luffy when they were trapped in the facility. He knew for a fact that he would never disrespect them by dying after all the trouble they went through to save him, to free him from that horrible place. To die after all of that would be like spitting in their faces. "Then is there any other way to settle this matter?" Sanji asked with a defiant glare. From the water, the chefs were watching in worry, wondering if Luffy was actually going to hurt Sanji. Now, you guys. Stop fighting. It's simply disgraceful for you to fight among yourselves after all this. You can't do any more reckless things while the hostage is with us anyway," Pearl said with a smug look on his face, both Sanji and Luffy pausing in their yelling to look at the man. "It was unfortunate for you guys to have the Krieg pirates as your opponent," Pearl continued with a laugh as he lowered into another position. "Burn to death with my fire pearls," he shouted as he began running forward, fists on fire as he ran their way, still laughing. Luffy and Sanji didn't move, the former preparing to finish the annoying man right then and there, but his haki picked up on someone moving their way fast. He quickly pushed Sanji back to keep the blonde from getting run over and then jumped backward himself. It was just in time too, because Jin was running right through where they'd been standing, his weapons in hand as he charged towards Pearl. "Huh?" Pearl didn't even have time to defend himself as Jin attacked the man's chest shield with his tonfas, effectively breaking it apart with a single blow. "Jin," Sanji said, surprised to see the man fighting his own crewmate. "Why? Jin-san?" Pearl asked, equally, if not more, surprised as he began falling forward. "Sorry, Pearl. Out of my way." With a crash, Pearl fell onto the deck, but Jin didn't look at him, instead facing forward with a frown. "Jin, are you going to betray us?" Krieg asked furiously. I'm sorry, Don Krieg. He saved our lives. I don't want him to die this way. At least. Please let me bury him with my own hands. Jin asked as he turned, resting one of his tonfa on his shoulder as he looked to Sanji. Have you lost your mind, Pirate Fleet Chief Battle Commander? Krieg asked, though some of his anger left him at the man's words. Are you alright, owner? Owner, please hang in there, Patty and Carne said worriedly as they helped Zeff sit up, having swum over to him once Jin had left. Chief Battle Commander? Sanji asked once he saw Zeff was safe. Then he wasn't an underling? Patty asked in worry and fear. To think that he cracked that shield guy's shield. How powerful, Carne murmured as he observed the tonfas that Jin wielded, 2 metal balls on the ends of them. See, it worked great. My plan to lure him out. Luffy boasted, as if that had been his plan from the beginning, smiling as he looked at Jin. Liar, you were really going to break the ship, weren't you? Sanji yelled over at Luffy, having half the mind to go strangle him. Sanji-san, Jin shouted. What? Sanji barked back, still frustrated. I wanted you to leave this ship unhurt, but it looks like that's not gonna happen, Jin said. He hadn't moved yet, so Sanji and Luffy weren't either, the two watching the Krieg pirate as he spoke. You got that right. The blonde answered. I can't let you have this restaurant even if it means risking my life, he explained. Then, at least burying you with my own hands is my way of settling this matter, Jin said. HMPH, thanks. To hell with you, Sanji said as he lit yet another cigarette. With breaking decks and water, Sanji had gone through more cigarettes than he normally did. You too, 11,097, Jin said, now looking to Luffy who wasn't worried in the slightest. Well, I won't lose against a weakling like you, Luffy stated, knowing he was much stronger than Jin. Jin, along with the Krieg pirates, all blanched at the words and Luffy's complete lack of worry. You bastard, what did you just say to our chief commander? To hell with you, weaklings, how dare you run your mouth like that? We're the Krieg pirates, the strongest pirates in the East Blue. Luffy gave the yelling pirates a confused look, tilting his head slightly. Wasn't it just because you had the biggest number of pirates? He asked. This only made the pirates even angrier. Oh, boy. You struck at the heart of the matter, Sanji muttered as he blew out smoke, holding his cigarette between his fingers. So I was right, Luffy said. He had only just learned about the Krieg pirates today, so he was glad he seemed to have understood so far. You son of a bitch. I'm gonna kill you. Stop mocking us. At once, a swarm of pirates swam out of the water and pulled themselves onto the deck. Luffy, Sanji and Jin were standing on, weapons raised as they got ready to attack. Luffy smirked, equally excited to fight them because honestly, holding back was beginning to annoy him. Back off. Luffy nearly groaned in annoyance at Krieg's words. Don Krieg, but if you get upset when called weak, that just proves that you are weak. The result will decide if you're strong or weak. You got me. Don't get so worked up, Krieg ordered as he sat down, looking to his men in the water. Why yes, sir, they shouted back. Jin, finishing off that cook is your responsibility. I'll take care of that naive 11,097 over there, Krieg said with a grin, and Luffy really hoped that meant he could finally get into a fight now. Understood, Don Krieg. Jin agreed as he looked back over to Sanji. Hey, brat, Krieg shouted over to Luffy. I'll make you fully experience the true power that conquered the East Blue. I'll teach you that your devil fruit or whatever it is means nothing, Krieg told him menacingly, though the effect was lost on Luffy who wasn't intimidated in the slightest. All your griping's getting annoying. I'll kick your ass. It's as simple as that, he said with a frown that quickly turned into a smile. I'm coming over there now. You just wait over there, Luffy said, beaming as he felt Krieg's irritation rise. What impudence, the man muttered darkly. This isn't for that cook. That's right. When Jin-san holds that weapon in his hands, it means he's serious, the pirates said amongst themselves. Everyone watching as Jin began slowly spinning one of his tonfas at his side, the spinning increasing in speed until it was a blur. His nickname is Demon. It doesn't matter if his enemy is crying or screaming, he tortures him to death mercilessly. He's a demon who doesn't have a shred of sympathy. Sanji, Luffy, and Jin all ignored the talking from the pirates floating in the sea, focused more on each other than them. I'm sorry Sanji-san, but you can't defeat me, Jin told the chef, his voice hard compared to the despair from before. Just keep saying that, you small fry. Sanji goaded. It did the trick because Jin's upper body lowered and he began running forward. Here I come, he announced, tonfa spinning behind him now as he ran towards Sanji. The blonde lifted his left leg, kicking out to where Jin was running, however the man easily jumped back and out of the way, grinning as he flung his tonfa right towards Wee. The chef managed to get out of the way, but only just barely, eyes widening as he realized how close the weapon had come to hitting his hand. Jin pulled the tonfa out of the hole he'd created in the deck, still grinning, and Sanji spun into a more balanced position, kicking out his leg again. You son of a. Jin avoided this kick as well however, and before Sanji could catch himself, Jin was slamming the metal weapon across Sanji's neck, pushing him onto his back against the deck. "Sanji," Luffy called, turning to make sure the man was okay. Sanji was coughing, his breathing restricted as Jin held the tonfa in place, sitting cross-legged beside Sanji's head. "I warned you that you can't defeat me," Jin muttered, expression shadowed as he looked to the deck. Luffy felt the despair though, the pirate not liking that he was hurting Sanji but feeling he had no other choice. "See you. Just accept your defeat," Jin said, looking at Sanji with a murderous grin despite his emotions. He began spinning his other tonfa behind him, still pinning Sanji to the ground with the first one. "Yeah, our chief commander is really incredible. Crush him, Jin-san," the pirates shouted, cheering Jin on with grins and raised fists. Sanji, come on," in contradiction to the pirates. The chefs were filled with worry as they cried out to Sanji with wide eyes, fear gripping their hearts as they watched what might possibly be Sanji's death. Not that Luffy would let that happen. "Die," Jin called out as he began swinging his tonfa down towards Sanji's head. Before it could reach him though, Sanji spit his cigarette out, right into Jin's forehead, and while the man was momentarily distracted by it, Sanji used the time to squeeze his head out from under the tonfa that had been holding him down. The tonfa Jin had tried using to hit Sanji on the head hit the deck where Sanji had been, but now that he was gone, it merely smashed the deck. Free from restriction, Sanji spun around again, aiming yet another kick towards Jin's head, and this time, he hit his mark. Despite this, Jin retaliated by swinging his tonfa back and into Sanji's chest, knocking the chef back a few feet, the two laying on the deck in pain. That cook landed a blow on Jin-san. "Don't tell me Jin-san is gonna be defeated too," the pirates murmured worriedly, their eyes slowly widening at the realization that even one of their powerhouses might lose. "You fools! What have you seen with your own eyes all this time? Jin is a cool-headed demon whom I put my trust in. That's exactly why I appointed him as the chief commander. He'll show his true colors soon," Krieg growled out. Back on the Baratie's smashed deck, Sanji and Jin were both standing back up, Sanji gripping his abdomen and Jin gritting his teeth. "Is Sanji really okay?" Patty asked in concern. "Of course he isn't, combining the attacks from that shield guy. He must have at least 5 to 6 broken ribs," Carne answered. In between the two chefs, Zeph was watching on wordlessly, expression unreadable. "Those skewered dumplings aren't as good as I thought," Sanji said to Jin breathlessly with a grin, referring to the man's tonfas. "Is that the best the chief commander can do?" Sanji goaded again. What's he doing? Is this any time to be paying attention to others? Alright, I'll kick his ass now," Luffy exclaimed, his attention back to Krieg. He was dying to fight someone already, and seeing as Krieg wasn't doing anything, now was the perfect opportunity. Running forward, Luffy jumped onto a fallen mast, running along it and straight towards Krieg who was still sitting. "Don't overexert yourself," Krieg said with a smirk as he watched Luffy run. Before the rubber boy could reach the deck Krieg was sitting on, the man flicked something into the water.
"Huh?" Luffy asked, noticing the object make a small splash ahead of him. He didn't have time to think more about it, because the water suddenly exploded in front of him, blocking his view of Krieg. His haki told him that there was an attack aimed his way, but he knew it wouldn't hurt him, so he only stood still.
Gunfire rang out, and a single bullet aimed right at Luffy's heart flew towards the team, hitting its mark without issue. It didn't harm Luffy though, and the skin stretched far out behind him, Luffy bracing himself and flinging the bullet out harmlessly into the air. Taking off his hat and placing it safely on an empty section of deck, Luffy glared at Krieg. "You bastard, do you really intend to fight me?" he yelled to the pirate captain. Luffy was already annoyed enough and Krieg's parlor tricks weren't doing anything to help that. "Intend to fight you? I don't need to do such a thing. What's needed is a means to kill. That's all. And that's the force that humans have. Remember it, you damn monkey," Krieg shouted back, his overconfidence irritating Luffy further. He knew all too well the power humans could hold over someone else's mortality, and he also knew that there was no way in hell Krieg would ever hold that kind of power over him. "What? If you take a monkey lightly, it'll scratch you," Luffy mocked, hooking his fingers on either side of his mouth and stretching them out. A thump behind him and a spike in pain from Sanji turned his attention back to the chef's fight. "Sanji," he called, his irritation fading into worry as he saw Sanji in a heap on the ground, blood falling from his mouth into a puddle beneath him. Holding his throat, the chef started coughing, more blood coming out as a result. Jin stood behind him, holding 2 bloody tonfas and looking the same as he had before, only a little roughed up compared to Sanji. "All right. His bones are shattered by now. Get him," the pirates encouraged. "Damn it, if only I hadn't taken the damage from the shield guy. He's taken at least 10 hits of those iron balls by now," the chef said fearfully. "You really do whatever you want. You small fry," despite how confident Sanji was trying to sound, Luffy noticed that the chef was realizing just how strong Jin was, worry and fear starting to fill the blonde as he watched Jin begin spinning his tonfa again. "I'll finish you off now, don't struggle anymore," Jin said, swinging his weapon at Sanji. The chef, despite his pain and injuries, was able to cartwheel out of the way, a look of annoyance on his face.
What was that? Pity? He asked angrily, still standing on his hands. Before Jin could turn his way, Sanji kicked his foot down on the pirate's back, knocking him onto the deck.
"Don't underestimate me," he shouted. Even though he'd been able to do all of this, Sanji realized quickly that the adrenaline that had enabled him to do it without worrying about the pain was wearing off, and with a gasp, he fell to his knees, wrapping his arms around his middle and curling in on himself in pain. "Sanji!" Luffy called out, not liking how much pain he could feel coming from the man, knowing that the other chefs were probably right about how bad Sanji's insides had to be. "Ah, Sanji. Oh no, he can no longer bear even the shock from his own attacks," Patty and Carne said from where they were watching. Jin, seeing that Sanji was down again, stood back up, gritting his teeth and frowning as he walked over to the blonde and grabbed him around the neck, pushing him against the deck again. "You damn bastard," Sanji managed to growl out in between breaths, glaring up at Jin whose eyes were shadowed. There was a tense silence, no one moving as they all thought this was finally going to be it for Sanji, but Luffy could feel otherwise. Even though, throughout the whole fight, Jin had been pushing away his feelings of unwillingness, they were suddenly coming back full force in the man. The pirate truly didn't want to harm Sanji, and with a frown, Luffy already knew the man didn't have the conviction to kill the chef like he made it seem. Sanji realized this as well, his eyes widening as he realized that Jin was crying above him. I can't Don Krieg," Jin uttered, voice choked as tears. Behind him, Luffy felt Krieg's surprise. I can't do it, Don Krieg," Jin cried out loudly, letting go of Sanji's neck and raising his head. "I can't kill this man," he cried. "What did you say?" Krieg roared ferociously, looking like he was about to explode in anger. It was the first time for me. No one had treated me so kindly before. So I can't kill this man. I know, I don't intend to betray you. I don't think what we've done up until now is wrong or anything, either. I still respect your power and I appreciate you as well. I was really happy when you put your trust in my strength and appointed me as the chief commander. So I followed your orders and I will from here on as well. But, I can't kill just this one person, Don Krieg. If circumstances allow, is there any way you'd let this ship, this restaurant off the hook? Jin asked, almost pleaded, with a hopeful smile Krieg's way. Luffy, who had been watching with a blank expression, frowned when he felt Krieg's anger peak. You son of a bitch, as if defying my orders wasn't enough, now you're giving me a lecture. What's the meaning of this craziness? How disappointing. Morality. Sympathy. I hate those kinds of things the most. Didn't I always say that? Krieg asked, taking off one of his shoulder plates and attaching it to his fist, aiming in towards where Jin, Luffy, and Sanji were. Move away, guys. Krieg growled to the rest of his crew, the skull on the golden plate opening its mouth and revealing a hole. Don, that's... Jin cried out in shock, jaw-dropping, and eyes widening as he stared down the weapon. MH5. That's the strongest poison gas weapon, he finished, Sanji looking over the best he could seeing as he was still being pinned to the ground. What? He asked, a frown on his face as he grit his teeth. Poison gas? Luffy asked with a frown of his own. Ah, mask. Put the mask on, hurry up, we'll be killed too. To use a weapon like that? That's despicable, you bastard. Do you know what's gonna happen when you use that? The pirates shouted as they all hurried to pull out masks. Stop whining about stupid stuff, you fools. This is a battle. Winning is the only goal. Foul play. Dirty. What's wrong with that? Might makes right. No matter what means we take, the result is everything. Using poisonous gas or whatever. Winning is all that matters. That's power. Krieg said with a smirk. The pirates all holding masks to their faces as they looked to their captain. Luffy was glaring at him, feeling the slimy greed coming from him. Krieg was one of the worst pirates, the kind without honor, and Luffy knew he would enjoy taking him down. What a horrible bastard, Sanji muttered, turning the best he could onto his side. Above him, Jin pulled out his own gas mask but didn't move to put it on. Throw that gas mask away. You're no longer one of us. Die, Krieg ordered, his smirk falling and turning into a hateful glare. Feeling Jin's despair, Luffy began running across the mast towards Krieg again. I won't let you shoot poisonous gas, he yelled because even though he would, most likely, be fine, he knew that everyone else wouldn't. Stop scampering about, anchor boy, Krieg shouted, hitting the mast that Luffy was running on and pushing it down, throwing Luffy off balance long enough to ready another weapon. Without a second's hesitation, Krieg began firing tiny spikes at Luffy, something that would definitely hurt the rubber team should they hit him. Thanks to his haki, Luffy was able to dodge most of them with ease, but without much room on the mast, he was forced to move back toward Jin and Sanji to avoid being hit completely. Damn it, he growled in anger, realizing he was back where he started. Jin, you don't have to listen to what that weakling says, I'm gonna kick his ass now, Luffy told the pirate, having noticed the turmoil coming from the pirate as he struggled with the option of listening to Krieg or not. Don't mock Don Krieg, he's the strongest man. You can't defeat him, Jin said in defense of his former captain.
Come to your senses, you idiot. That man is trying to kill you. Sanji yelled, not understanding why Jin was still defending Krieg.
I deserve it. Since I couldn't fulfill my role, shamelessly losing to emotion. This is a well-deserved punishment, Jin reasoned to himself, throwing his mask away and into the water. Jin, Luffy called with wide eyes. Why, Sanji asked, struggling just to get that much out. You're wrong, Luffy shouted, everyone looking at him with wide eyes due to just how much anger seeped in the teen's words. None of them had heard him that infuriated before, and looking at him now, he looked just as enraged as he sounded. Wah? I said you're wrong? Losing to emotion? Deserving to die for doing what was right? You're wrong. Krieg might be the strongest in the East Blue, but Pops, Whitebeard, he's the strongest in the world. He didn't care if we disobeyed so long as there was a good reason. If I refused to hurt someone because I thought it was right, Pops wouldn't be mad, he would be happy that I did what I thought was right. Luffy shouted, everyone staring in awe as they listened to Luffy talk about Whitebeard. Enough. It's too late. Die together with that cook, deadly poisonous gas bomb. M.H. 5. Krieg yelled in irritation, everyone remembering the predicament they were in. With a loud boom, Krieg fired off the weapon, a red ball flying out and into the air. Into the sea. Owner, get inside the restaurant. The chefs all scrambled while Patty and Carne dragged Zeph into the restaurant as quickly as they could, shutting the doors behind them. Realizing there wasn't much time left at all, Luffy quickly stretched his arms out towards two nearby pirates, stealing the masks off their faces. Sanji, Jin, use these, Luffy shouted as he threw them in their direction. 11,097. They shouted with wide eyes. Now for mine, Luffy said, turning back towards where the pirates had been, only to realize they weren't there anymore. Ah, everyone dived into the sea, he said, though he wasn't concerned. Okay, maybe he was a little, but that was only because he didn't know how deadly a poison had to be until it affected him. They had said this poison was pretty deadly, but they also thought Krieg was strong, so there was a possibility it wasn't as strong as they were making it sound. Sighing, Luffy glanced over his shoulder to make sure Jin and Sanji were wearing their masks and realized Jin was still watching him with wide eyes, holding his mask in his hand rather than on his face. Jin, put it on, Luffy yelled, noticing the poison gas was close to hitting the deck now. But what about, Luffy didn't let him finish his sentence as he ran over and slammed the mask onto Jin's face, ignoring the muffled protests as he held it in place. He looked up from Jin with a glare as he watched the gas bomb finally hit the deck and explode, a cloud of pink making it impossible to see anything. Luffy's strong sense of smell was assaulted with the bitter smell of the poison, and for a brief moment Luffy felt his lungs burn, but other than that, he was completely unaffected. When the mist finally dissipated, Sanji took his mask off, eyes wide as he looked at Luffy. Let go of the mask, Jin's muffled yells cried out as he gripped at Luffy's hands. Oi, 11,097, Sanji asked worriedly, eyes wide as he looked over the teen. Finally, Luffy deemed it safe for Jin to take the mask off, not smelling any more of the poison in the air. How? What? Jin asked with equally large eyes as he sat up, looking over Luffy. Are you two alright? Luffy asked, ignoring their worry as he stood up off of Jin. Us? What about you? That was deadly gas? Jin shouted. Yeah, and now I'm gonna have to call Whiskey too, but my Den was on the Mary. She won't be too happy that I'm gonna call her so late after inhaling poison. Luffy said, talking more to him. See two concerned people staring at him. Why aren't you, I don't know, dying? Sanji asked incredulously, eyes bugging out. Oh, poison doesn't hurt me, Luffy said nonchalantly, as if that was normal. Doesn't, Sanji started, eyebrows furrowing. Hurt you? Jin finished, also looking confused. Only really strong poison hurts me. That NZ7 stuff kind of burned a little and it smelled, but other than that, I'm fine. Luffy told them. You should have let Jin die there, you little demon brat. Now I'm gonna have to resort to more bloodier methods. Krieg growled out in annoyance, still not understanding quite how Luffy hadn't been affected by his poison, but realizing that he'd have to do something else to kill him. Jin, it seems you picked the wrong man to follow, Sanji said as he glared in Krieg's direction. Even after Jin had attempted throwing his own mask away, Krieg was still determined to kill the man based purely on his morality. So you actually decided to side with that idiot scum? Krieg asked Sanji, which caused the blonde's glare to harden. Scum? The blonde growled. He may not have known Jin long, But he knew that if Jin was scum, then Krieg was the scum on scum. That's right. An idiot who loses sight of our goal and can't follow my orders no longer holds value to me. There's no guarantee that he won't betray me again. It's only out of love that I kill him right here and now," Krieg said with a grin as the pirates gawked in the water. "I never imagined that Don would actually kill the chief commander." "See, can't be true. There's no way he would. Jin-san is his right-hand man." "That's right. No one has been more faithful to Don than Jin-san. That time too, when Full Body's ship came after us right after we escaped the Grand Line. Yeah, he acted as a decoy all by himself, pretending to be Don. He always risked his life fighting for Don Krieg. I never imagined that Don would actually try to kill him," the pirates said to each other, their faith in Krieg wavering slightly at the man's display. "Jin," Luffy said, his voice dropping from the cheery, bright tone it had been moments ago and turning into a hard, low voice that grabbed everyone's attention. "Huh?" Jin asked, eyes still wide as he looked to Luffy, whose back was to him now. "Don't you dare die," Luffy demanded, shocking the pirate. What? But you saw what I did. You deserve to live. I already told you that you were wrong. Greed over there is wrong too. You did what was right, and if that means you have to die, then I should be dead then too," Luffy shouted in a no-nonsense tone that left Jin speechless.
"I've never once killed someone. No matter if I was told to or not. If not killing someone is wrong, then I should have died years ago. Don't let someone like him kill you," Luffy continued, still not looking at Jin as he spoke.
"You were a part of his crew and you were loyal, but I have to kick his ass now before he can kill you or take this restaurant. You're a good guy, Jin, so you better not die," Luffy finished, giving Jin a stern look. You can't defeat him," Jin muttered weakly, stunned by Luffy's words. "Cool down, attacking him head-on would be playing right into his hands. You'll die," Sanji exclaimed, grabbing Luffy's wrist in an attempt to stop the teen from doing something reckless. "I won't die," Luffy said, and the conviction in his voice made Sanji's grip loosen, eyes widening again. Luffy took that opportunity to run forward, a new fury burning in him as he honed in solely on Krieg. "Oi!" Sanji yelled, though it was useless as he watched Luffy run off. "Go ahead and shoot as much as you want," the young captain shouted to the man, enraged. "Such a fool. The easiest enemy to kill is one who's in a frenzy. The sea is your hell, anchor boy. You're heading towards." As he spoke, Krieg threw a few more bombs into the water in front of him. "Your graveyard," he announced. "My graveyard?" Luffy asked, running along the mast yet again in an attempt at finally reaching Krieg, only for the water to explode around him like last time, blocking his view. Another round of gunfire went off and the chefs watched with wide eyes. "Oh no, get out of there 11,097. No one could see what was happening due to the water masking everyone's vision, but the pirates were grinning victoriously already, watching as Krieg's spiked bullets shot towards where Luffy had been. "He's dead," one of them said confidently, grinning viciously. They were proven wrong however when the water cleared and Luffy was still running, not a single scratch on him. "He didn't get hit?" Jin asked in disbelief, not having expected that. After all, with that much water, it should have been impossible for Luffy to see the bullets, much less dodge them. "You little," Krieg growled, his confident grin falling into a scowl as he saw the unharmed Luffy still running his way. "Gum gum," Luffy called, jumping into the air and swinging his fist out. "Hit me, if you can," Krieg shouted as he pulled his cape around him, revealing it to be covered in spikes. "How dirty, that's..." Sanji trailed off, equal parts angry and worried as he watched beside Jin. "Pistol," Luffy called, covering his fist in a light coating of armament hockey before slamming his fist into Krieg's face. "What?" the pirates cried unanimously. Everyone, even Zeph, was watching with dropped jaws. The spikes underneath Luffy's fist broke off, leaving the teen unharmed yet again, whereas Krieg now had blood covering his face as he fell to the deck. Don Krieg was beaten, he hit him in the spikes. How isn't he hurt? The chefs were all clamoring loudly to each other, trying to make sense of what they'd just seen, while the pirates sat in stunned silence. "Holy shit. We've never even seen Don brought to his knees. He hit Don in his face, and he did it through that porcupine cape. See, can you believe that?" the pirates asked softly. "Don," Jin muttered just as quietly. He was torn, because he still highly respected the man, even if he had ordered him to die, so to see Krieg being beaten made him want to help. "Is this my graveyard? Or yours? Don't think you can send me to my grave with stuff like this? I'm not gonna die here," Luffy said to the downed Krieg, grinning wickedly. "He's crazy," Sanji muttered, Zeph eyeing him out of the corner of his eye. "You see idiots like that every once in a while. Ones who will fight to the death once they've set their eyes on a target," Zeph told him, turning his view back to Luffy. "Fight to the death," Sanji repeated, not understanding why someone would do that. "You're in trouble if someone like that becomes your enemy. But you know, win or lose, I like guys like him," Zeph continued. Jin sat nearby, in a state of shock as he watched Krieg's unmoving body, blood pooling beside the man's mouth. Never, in all of his time as a Krieg pirate, had he seen the Don pushed to this limit with one hit no less. What's gonna become of this fight, you idiot? That was just dumb luck. There's no way Don would be defeated by a stupid brat like that. Don't worry. The pirates tried reasoning, not wanting to believe what they were seeing. Finally, Krieg twitched. I'm not gonna die here, you said. Krieg managed to get out, struggling onto his hands and knees. If you won't die here, then, who the hell will? Krieg asked, suddenly springing to his feet and pushing his shoulder plate into Luffy's chest. The young captain jumped upwards as the plate exploded, moving towards Krieg. You will, Luffy yelled, hooking his foot on Krieg's shoulder as he jumped over the man's shoulder, pulling him back onto the ground. Don't get beaten again. What the hell is going on? Enemies are supposed to die without even touching Don Krieg. Don's supposed to be invincible. What the hell is that brat? The Marines were right. He and his brothers, they're from hell itself. Demons. Devils. The pie, but their words didn't faze Luffy, and all he did was grin, eyes shadowed by his hair and giving him an even more menacing aura than he'd already had. He's really good. Yeah, I'm blown away, Patty and Carne said to each other. It's a good thing he's on our side, Sanji muttered, finally realizing just how strong Luffy was as he watched him fight. He's amazing. Get Krieg. Yeah, he can do it, the chefs cheered, their morale rising at this new development.
That kid is fighting Don at his level, without getting hurt. This isn't a dream, right? Don's getting beaten by the Grand Line Demon.
Don's supposed to be invincible. As it stands, the legend of Don Krieg the strongest will.
Stop talking nonsense. Krieg roared, cutting off the pirate's doubts as he stood, taking off his other shoulder plate and connecting it with the first. With them connected, he pulled on a piece of wood sticking out, creating a long pole that he grabbed with both hands. Out of the two plates came a sharp spear, and with another roar, Krieg swung the new weapon at Luffy.
Luffy was able to jump backward, out of the way, but when the spear hit the ground, there was an explosion, shaking the piece of deck they were standing on.
What the? Sanji asked with wide eyes. Finally, Don Krieg's strongest weapon. One pirate said in relief.
The mighty battle spear. Jin mumbled, leaning forward as he watched with wide eyes.
Battle spear? Sanji asked, only glancing at Jin for a second before looking back to Luffy, who was now clinging to where the mast had broken off to keep from falling in the water. What's that? It exploded. Luffy asked himself. Now, I'll see how long you can keep avoiding this. It'll be a sight. 11,097. Those puny spears earlier didn't hit you, but this mighty battle spear is different. As soon as you touch it, you'll be blown to pieces. Krieg screamed, eyes bulging in raw anger. Swinging his spear again, he hit the deck again with it, exploding the surrounding area and sending Luffy flying away with the blast.
I'll fall, I'll fall, I'll fall, Luffy cried as he desperately looked for footing he could land on. Seeing a small piece of deck with a railing, he shot his hand out, grabbing it and pulling himself dead. Phew,
that was close. What's with that spear? It explodes every time he strikes it down, Luffy said, trying to make sense of the new weapon he was up against. The small piece of deck that he was standing on was moving harshly under his feet due to the waves and he frowned. Damn, with the foothold rocking like this, I can't fight with full power. Luffy grumbled, trying to figure out a solution to this problem, but coming up empty. A flood of murderous intent heading his way had him snapping his head up to see Krieg diving his way. The spear pointed right at Luffy's face, but before it made contact, Luffy shuffled backward. Annoyed, Krieg began swinging the spear at Luffy rapidly, but the monkey merely jumped and flipped over or under every attempt. One of his flips had him dangerously close to the edge of the deck, water lapping up the sides of his sandals. Whoa whoa whoa, Luffy muttered, trying to stop his momentum before he fell. Take this, Krieg yelled, aiming his spear at Luffy and swinging once more. Phew, that was close, Luffy said, wiping his forehead from where he was now clinging onto the wooden stick of the spear, everyone's sweat dropping at his position. You, damn caterpillar, Krieg roared, swinging the spear into the deck and causing yet another explosion that sent Luffy high into the air. Upside down, Luffy watched as the infuriated Krieg got ready to attack again. While Luffy was still falling from the sky, Krieg stabbed his spear towards him. With a grin, Luffy coated his fists again and used them to punch onto either side of the pointy sharp metal. At the contact, another explosion went off, worrying the chefs and pleasing the pirates. 11,097. Sanji called out, thinking that had been the end of it. As the light and smoke from the explosion cleared, they saw a charred Luffy fall onto the deck, but within the seconds that he'd hit the deck, he stood back up. Ha, I'm not done yet. You made me angry, I won't let you die so easily. Krieg laughed, not caring that Luffy wasn't down for good yet. Damn it, that bastard Krieg brings out weapons one after another. There's no way 11,097 can. Even if hundreds of weapons are built in, he can't be defeated by someone with a spear of blind determination, Zeph said, cutting Sanji off.
The two of them, as well as Jin, watched as Krieg swung the spear again, to which Luffy punched, setting off another explosion and charring him. Despite having exploded twice now, Luffy still stood back up, further angering Krieg when he only grinned at him.
Now that makes you worth crushing. Krieg growled, any amusement from earlier gone now.
Life or death. In a pirate battle, if you fear death for even a moment, you'll fall to pieces. Zeph continued. What are you talking about? Sanji asked, and even Jin was listening on. At least, that kid doesn't have any hesitation. Another few explosions going off as Zeph spoke. Luffy standing again and grinning after each one. Is it a survival instinct? Or does he not fear death because he has faith in himself? Zeph asked with a grin of his own. Faith. Sanji murmured softly, eyes wide as he looked over to the fight again. Luffy was a little wobbly this time as he stood, but he was still grinning, still standing. Why? You son of a bitch. I told you that this is where you die. I am the strongest man. Krieg screamed, charging Luffy and causing another explosion. The fleet Krieg gathered. His hundreds of weapons and poison. If they're all force, then that kid's spear is also force. The spear held in his heart. I know an idiot who's holding back that spear for a stupid reason. Zeph said fondly. Beside him, Sanji's eyes widened further in realization while Jin listened in confusion.
My might battle spear is. What the hell did you do? Krieg's shout of surprised anger drew everyone back to the fight to see the sharp metal end of the spear crumbling away, Krieg looking at it with bulging eyes.
I gave it 5 punches. I guess that's it for your spear. Luffy said with a smirk, feeling the shock overcoming Krieg's anger. Around him, the pirates were just as shocked, fear taking hold stronger than before, and the chefs were becoming confident again. He destroyed the battle axe. Jin uttered, feeling the same way as when he saw Mihawk destroy their ships. But he's taken that many explosions. His body couldn't possibly keep up, Sanji said in concern, gripping his chest where he had his own injuries. Prepare yourself. Luffy warned, lowering his body. Huh? Krieg asked incredulously, his shock morphing back to anger as he looked at Luffy. This is a big enough foothold. With this much space, I can kick your ass just like I said I would. Luffy told him, his smirk widening and fists clenching. What? Krieg continued asking, as if not understanding what he was hearing. With the spear blade broken, that's just a bomb on a stick. The power is cut in half. Luffy observed, eyes flickering momentarily to the bomb Krieg held. You think so? Yeah, I do, Luffy replied easily. A bomb on a stick. So what of it? It's still more than enough force to blow you away. Whatever you say sounds like just a bluff, Krieg said, his confidence returning now as well. It's not a bluff. Mihawk showed you the power of the Grand Line, but I can show you the power of the New World, Luffy said menacingly. Just give it up. The moment you defied me, you signed your death warrant, Krieg said, not wanting to listen to anything Luffy was saying. Running forward, Krieg readied himself to hit Luffy again. I won't die, plea, Luffy mocked, sticking out his tongue at Krieg, finger hooked around the corners of his mouth and pulling. This only aggravated Krieg more, and finally, he swung again. Luffy, however, jumped, grabbing onto a wooden beam above them. Hey, I'm over here, he teased, enjoying himself immensely. That monkey, Krieg growled, swinging the bomb stick at the mast, knocking it down along with the beam Luffy was holding onto. Ooh-ah, Luffy called, imitating the monkey Krieg was calling him as he swung around the falling wood. He keeps hopping around, Krieg noticed, only to realize that Luffy was using a broken piece of wood like a javelin, throwing it right toward Krieg. It's useless, Krieg yelled as he shot a red smoke from his wrist. Just how many built-in weapons does he have? Sanji asked in disbelief. As the smoke disappeared, it showed that there was no more wooden pole heading his way. All that was left was a grinning Luffy. Gum gum. Gatling, with a flurry of punches, Luffy continuously hit Krieg's armor. All the while, Krieg smiled and took them, his confidence practically oozing off of him. When he was done, Luffy landed in front Krieg, his own grin never faltering. Weak. Your punches are powerless again, this wood steel armor. You can't even make a dent in it, New World pirate or not. This armor won't break, even with hundreds of monkey punches, Krieg boasted proudly. Are you sure about that? Luffy asked with a raised eyebrow, glancing at Krieg's shiny gold armor. Krieg's smile faltered, and when he looked down, he realized there was a crack. What? He roared, watching as the crack webbed out across his chest. Don's strongest armor. It's breaking. A pirate cried in astonishment. In the second that Luffy turned his head to look at the speaking pirate, he realized with his haki that Krieg was moving. Looking back, he saw the man standing high in the air on the crooked, broken mast. So you cracked my armor, that means nothing, I'm the strongest, and with my weapons, I'll take you down too. Just because this armor cracked, doesn't mean it's broken. The strong one is the one who survives. Even though Luffy could feel that Krieg wasn't as confident as before, he still looked at as he smirked down at Luffy. Then, that'll be me. Gum gum, Running up to where Krieg was standing, he threw both arms out behind him. Useless. Useless. It's useless. Even pride will only get you so far. Swinging his bomb on a stick towards Luffy. Krieg was surprised when Luffy ran right through the explosion, unaffected. Bazooka! Luffy called, bringing his fists forward and hitting Krieg right in the chest where the webbing was. Flying backward over the water, Krieg laughed as he dropped bombs from his hands into the water below. No good, this is all you can do. Krieg laughed, only to hear the cracking again. Looking down with wide eyes as he sailed through the air, he watched as the armor broke off of his body. But it's too late. You're done for 11,097, Krieg laughed again, clearly thinking that he was going to be the victor regardless. Everyone watched as the bombs splashed gently into the water, Luffy frowning as they did. It's a trap. Get out, Sanji cried, only a half second before there were multiple loud explosions. 11,097. Sanji yelled loudly, eyes wide as the wind from the explosions blew past him and the water rose, raining down on them. Gum gum. Yelling, Luffy surprised everyone, especially Krieg, as he pulled his arms back once again and jumped into the air. What? Krieg screamed, his fear rising again. Bazooka! Now that the armor was gone, there was nothing to protect Krieg from the blow and the man cried out in pain, falling even faster towards the water. Everyone's jaws dropped, and then the chefs were cheering. All right, good job. You're the best 11,097. Luffy knew better than to start celebrating now, however, feeling that Krieg wasn't quite unconscious yet. He was proven right when he saw Krieg move. Not so fast, he growled out painfully, blood dribbling down his chin. Luffy knew what was coming but was unable to redirect himself fast enough. Due to the bombs Krieg had used earlier, anything Luffy could have grabbed onto was now gone, leaving him open. The net flew towards him and Luffy frowned, realizing it wasn't a normal net. Can you escape? It's a steel net. Below us is the ocean. The game is over. 11,097. I'm the one who's getting the last laugh, Krieg cried. Voice so desperate it was nearly insane. Luffy only smiled, pushing his arms and legs out. If I can get my arms and legs out, the game is mine, Luffy told him, twisting his legs around the net towards where Krieg was holding onto it. Back on the Baratie's deck, Sanji and Jin were watching with odd expressions. What? Krieg yelled as Luffy's feet grabbed onto either side of his face. This is gonna end it for sure, Luffy yelled, immediately letting his legs unwind, spinning Krieg rapidly through the air. Gum gum giant gavel, Luffy called out as he directed Krieg to hit the Baratie's deck, smashing the man directly into it, and after a spike of fear, Krieg's emotions muffled. Still in the net however, Luffy fell right into the ocean. Everyone, sans the pirates, cheered as they saw the bloodied, unconscious Krieg laying on the deck nearby Zeph, Sanji, and Jin. Sanji could only stare at the spot Luffy had fallen in awe. If you have time to daydream, go save that kid already, Zeph told the blonde, confusing him. He won't be floating up to the surface. Those with the devil fruit power are hated by the sea and lose the ability to swim. Zeph informed him, turning his back to him. What'd you say, you damn geezer? You should have told me that sooner. What are you gonna do if it's too late? Sanji shouted as he quickly threw off his shoes and jacket. Jin watching in a state of shock, unable to do more than blink and breathe at the moment. Meanwhile, Luffy was trying his best to wrangle himself out of the net Krieg had him trapped in. Thanks to his sea resistance, he was able to move enough to attempt saving himself. However, the net was long and tangled, making it difficult for him to get it off. It was actually starting to frustrate him a bit, and he could feel the ocean's curse trying to take effect on him, weakening him. He felt another presence in the water with him, barely recognizing it as Sanji before he felt his resistance fail, and his body paralyzed, still tangled in the net as he lay at the bottom of the sea. Unable to hold his breath anymore, bubbles flew out of his mouth and he inhaled water. Right before his eyes closed, though, he saw Sanji swimming his way. Say something, 11,097. Yelling beside him and a familiar burning in his chest, throat, and nose woke him up. Eyebrows scrunching together. Luffy coughed roughly a few times, sitting up as he did. There were brief flashes of being dunked over and over into tanks, Haru telling him to go longer, but he pushed them away as fast as he could when he saw the sun, the sky, the ocean. I'm the strongest man, someone was still yelling, though it wasn't the same person as before, and Luffy looked to see Krieg, who he vaguely remembered beating, standing with blank eyes and a bloodied face. The rest of the Krieg pirates were clinging to the man, telling him to calm down, and Luffy felt that the man wasn't even conscious despite his movements. He's still going? Sanji asked beside Luffy, surprising the teen as he hadn't realized how close the blonde was. Gak. Turning back, Luffy saw that Jin, who Luffy felt was still in a state of shock, punching Krieg in the gut, downing the man once more. Don Krieg. We lost, Jin said mournfully, slinging the man over his shoulder as he said this. Chief Commander, one of the pirates said, surprised. Let's withdraw gracefully and start afresh. Thanks for everything, Sanji-san. Jin continued, not even looking towards the chef. Sure, don't ever come back, Sanji answered without any hesitation. 11,097. Jin called to Luffy next. Tilting his head in question, Jin smiled. I'll see you again on the Grand Line, he promised, the young captain smiling widely at the words. You. Sanji trailed off in surprise, not having expected the pirate to say that. When I think about it carefully, that's the only thing I want to do. It seems that Don Krieg's ambition became mine as well before I knew it. The hell with Krieg's loyalty. I've just been running away using Don Krieg's name as a shield. Once you're resolved, you don't have to think about stupid things like fearing your enemy or how to keep from getting hurt. I learned that from you. 11,097. Jin finished with a grateful smile towards Luffy. She, you're a good guy, Jin. I like you. I definitely want to see you again, Luffy declared. Beside him, Sanji was smiling softly as well. Patty, Carne. Give him the boat used to go grocery shopping, Sanji ordered, looking towards the two who were watching from the Baratie's doorway. What? Are you stupid? Why'd we have to give our boat to pirates? What's gonna happen to our grocery shopping, you idiot? He's right. Let's let those guys swim, as Patty and Carne yelled, one after the other. Luffy felt Sanji's irritation rise. Just bring it out already. The blonde finally erupted, stunning the two to tears. Okay, we got it. Don't yell at us, they sobbed out separately. Okay, we'll bring it out. They yelled together now, trying to hide their tears as they ran into the restaurant. Luffy laughed as he watched them go while Sanji shook his head and sighed. It took a few minutes, but soon enough, Patty and Carne had brought the boat around and Jin, Sanji, and Luffy had piled all of the Krieg members, along with Krieg himself, onto the tiny boat. It wasn't nearly enough to hold them all, so they were all piled high, one on top of the other. It's gonna sink. One of them cried in worry, but he was ignored. Why did I hesitate? What was I so worried about? When I think about it, I feel stupid, Jin said with a smile, Luffy and Sanji returning it as they watched him step onto the boat. Well, then, we gratefully accept the boat. We don't have to return the boat, right? Jin asked. Right. If you have the courage to come here to return it, try it, you small fry, Sanji teased. He's right. Just keep this in your brain. This is the sea restaurant Baratie, where cooks fight, Patty called, Luffy feeling that all of the chefs were standing behind him. Yeah, they called out, raising their fists proudly in the air. HMPH, what a scary restaurant, Jin commented. With that, Jin set the sail and he and the rest of the Krieg pirates were sailing off, Luffy waving happily to them and smiling widely. It was only seconds after Jin's boat was too far to see that Luffy started panicking. Ah, my hat, my straw hat, he cried, grabbing at his head as he realized he still wasn't wearing it. Oi, relax, it's right there, Sanji said as he gestured over to where Luffy had left the item on the deck. Huh? Oh yeah, there it is, Luffy said, calming down as he stretched his arm out and grabbed the hat, pulling it over and putting it on. By the way, will you? I'm not joining you, I won't become a pirate. I'll continue as a cook here until I get that damn geezer to acknowledge my skills, Sanji said in determination, looking off into the distance as he spoke softly. Luffy's smile left his face and it grew serious, also turning to look off at the horizon. Okay, then I give up, he said seriously. Your hand hasn't given up yet, Sanji choked out, grabbing at his collar that Luffy was pulling on. When he got the rubbery appendage off of him, Sanji straightened his collar and sighed. I can't leave here, since they're all undependable, but I'm hoping to go someday. To the Grand Line, Sanji said with a wistful smile, Luffy feeling his words as true and laughing. Then let's go now, he suggested with a smile. It's not the right time yet. Say, do you know the All Blue? Sanji turned to look at Luffy, his visible eye wide with excitement and his smile stretching bigger than Luffy had seen it before. The emotions from the blonde were happy, excited, longing, and Luffy thought that whatever this All Blue was, it was something that Sanji certainly liked. No, Luffy replied honestly, wanting to know what was so amazing about it to make Sanji so happy. Oh, you don't? It's a miracle, see? Sanji answered before going into detail about the mystical place. Luffy listened unattentively, watching as Sanji grew more excited, clearly passionate about the All Blue. Both Sanji and Luffy sat there on the broken deck for what seemed like hours, Luffy listening as Sanji rambled on about how amazing the All Blue was supposed to be. The straw-hatted teen was sure that Sanji could talk about the place forever, but he was stopped when a chef called him inside to start cooking. Smile dropping, Sanji sighed and stood up with Luffy, smoothing out his clothes. Turning to head into the restaurant, Luffy laughed, stopping the chef who looked at him in confusion. You'll go there someday. To the All Blue. I know it, Luffy said confidently, giving Sanji his D smile as he did. The blonde blinked at him, Luffy feeling that he was surprised by his words, and then with a smile and nod, Sanji headed into the restaurant. Glancing up to the upper floor of the Baratie, Luffy saw Zeph there, smiling fondly down at them, and with a small chuckle, Luffy headed inside as well. Guys, mealtime, Aw, man, we can finally eat. Food. 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 The chefs were sitting at 2 long tables set up in the restaurant when Luffy came down from upstairs, face clean from the char that he'd gotten from the explosions Krieg's bomb had caused. His mouth drooled at the smell wafting to his sensitive nose, and he only barely noticed Sanji walking out from the kitchen behind him. "Hey, where do we sit?" Sanji asked as he walked up to Luffy, talking to the chefs. "Where's our food?" Luffy asked, more concerned about eating than he was sitting. He'd eat standing if it was necessary. "There's no chairs for you. Sit on the floor and eat," 2 chefs said, one of them laughing as he spoke. "No chairs? That can't be true. This is a restaurant," Sanji said, annoyed as he looked around at the chefs stuffing their faces. Luffy wasn't hung up on that predicament though, and was instead going around and grabbing food to eat, putting it on a tray.
"Guess we can't help it," Sanji muttered as he walked over to the wall and sat against it.
"They're acting kinda weird," Luffy said as he returned to Sanji with a tray of food. He could feel that, even though the G to be mean and annoying, their emotions said that they were only acting. "HMPH, nothing new," Sanji told him as the young captain sat down beside him. A clang from the table as someone hit it drew their attention. "Oi, who prepared the soup this morning?" Patty demanded, turning his head to look around the room. Beside him, Sanji raised his hand high, a giant smile on his face and pride swelling in his chest. "I did it, isn't it good? I made it especially good today," the blonde chef boasted. "I can't eat damn nasty soup like this." "What is this, pig feed?" Patty asked as he rubbed his mouth, spitting a few times as if trying to clear the taste from his mouth. Sanji's pride quickly turned to rage, his smile falling as he glared at Patty. Meanwhile, Luffy was continuing to eat as he listened, a little confused as to why Patty was lying so convincingly to the chef. He didn't intervene though, only watched on as he ate. "Oi, is human food not to your liking, you damn raccoon dog?" Sanji asked lowly as he slowly stood up, his hands stuffed in his pockets. "Ha, when it's this bad, it's art now. It makes me sick to my stomach," Patty said, spitting again. "I'm sorry, but I'm really confident about today's soup. There's something wrong with your taste buds." Sanji all but growled as he walked towards Patty. At the table, Carne took a spoonful of the aforementioned soup, and once he wiped his mouth he was sticking his tongue out as well. This is nasty," Carne cried out, spitting like Patty had done. "I can't eat it, right, guys?" another chef yelled, going through the same motions of spitting in the air. "I can't eat something like this is damn nasty soup. I can't eat soup like this is terrible, someone, give me some water." One by one, the chefs tasted the soup and then immediately declared their hatred for it, spitting in the air as they slammed their spoons down onto the table. "What do you think you're doing, you bastards?" Sanji yelled out, enraged now. "You're a sham sous chef after all. You're just an old-timer.
"We're sick and tired of you settling matters with violence."
If the food's bad, we're gonna say so," they all yelled back. "What'd you say?" Sanji asked, almost daring them to continue. "We're seafaring cooks. Don't waste even a drop of soup," Zeph said from his own table, eating the soup as he did until not a single drop was left in his bowl. Everyone looked surprised to hear him speak, and when he was finished they watched as he stood, smashing the bowl on the ground. "Owner, you geezer." Luffy only continued watching, still not sure what was going on or why everyone was lying to Sanji. "What is this damn nasty soup? It's like sludge. If we serve something like this, our restaurant will go out of business," Zeph said as he pointed at the shattered bowl. "Don't be ridiculous, you damn geezer. Just how is this soup different from yours? Tell me," Sanji demanded as he stepped forward, grabbing Zeph's collar and shaking him. "From my soup? Don't flatter yourself," the owner yelled after glaring back at Sanji. With a punch, Zeph knocked Sanji off of him and onto the floor. Owner punched him. He didn't kick, the watching chef said quietly, obviously surprised by this turn of events. "It'll be a billion years before you can give me a lecture on cooking, little brat. I'm a man who has cooked on seas around the world," Zeph yelled. There was a tense few seconds as Sanji stared at the man from the ground, holding his cheek, but eventually he stood. "Damn it." With that curse, the blonde chef ran out of the restaurant, slamming the door behind him. The chefs all moved to the window, watching as the angry man jumped over the railing and took his anger out on the already destroyed deck, kicking it over and over again. From the floor, Luffy had finished everything else and moved onto the soup that had started all of this, sipping it down in one gulp. With a satisfied sigh, Luffy stood up and went to get more. "This soup is super good. I don't know why you lied," Luffy said as he ladled more of it into his bowl. "We know it's good. Sanji's cooking skills are recognized by everyone here," Zeph said in a much quieter tone than before as everyone looked over at Luffy. "It's not bad at all. Yeah, this soup is very well made." "Boy, that was scary," he seriously snapped. "Yeah." Luffy continued listening as he ladled more and more soup into his bowl until it was full, and even then he only started ladling it into his mouth. Compared to other soups he'd had, this one was heavenly. But that idiot won't listen unless we go this far. Say, kid. Zeph suddenly asked as Luffy went to sit back down on the floor. Luffy hummed, eating more of the soup. You were saying that you wanted to cook for your ship, right? This isn't a favor that I'd like to ask of you or anything, but would you take that little brat with you to the Grand Line? When Luffy perked up at that, Zeph continued. The Grand Line is his dream, Zeph continued. Man, owner, you really made us put on quite a show. I was worried that he might figure it out because of your bad acting. Your acting was horrible, too. I'll have another bowl of soup. Me too. One by one, all the chefs that declared the soup to be inedible all went in for more, smiles on their faces as they did. So what do you say, kid? Zeph asked once everyone was settled with their food again. No, Luffy replied bluntly, feeling everyone's shock as well as seeing it as some fell from their chairs. What? They cried out, none of them having expected that answer. I thought you wanted to cook for your ship. Or are you saying that he's not good enough for you? Zeph asked in confusion. No, he's good enough all right. I do want him to come with me, but he wants to continue working here as a cook. Even if you guys ask me to take him with me, I can't. I won't force him to join, Luffy said as he finished yet another plate of food. He had felt how adamant and determined Sanji was to stay here, and like he said, he would never force someone who truly didn't want to join him. He wanted people to join because they wanted to join, and Sanji didn't want to join, not yet. So you're saying that you can't agree to it until he tells you so himself, huh? Zeph asked as he stroked his long braided mustache. Exactly. More please, Luffy said, holding out his empty plate. Well, fair enough. But who knows if that twisted damn brat can just say he'll go. There's no way he can sense he's an idiot through and through. Zeph mused, ignoring Luffy completely. More please, Luffy repeated as if the owner hadn't heard. A familiar presence and strong feelings of panic and fear were suddenly closing in on the Baratie, and only seconds after Luffy turned to look at the door, it was smashed down with a loud crash, a dust cloud forming as a result. Standing, everyone watched as the cloud cleared and Sanji was laying there with a giant shark on top of him, a man sticking out of the shark's mouth. Sanji? What is he? A fishman? He came all the way from the Fishman Island to eat our dishes? Idiot. It's a human and a panda shark. Poking his head through the crowding chefs, Luffy chewed on a bone. Yosaku, he called, having recognized both the scent and haki signature of the man. Oh, Luffy and Ikki. Yosaku cried, tears falling down his face as he twitched in the shark's mouth.
Why are you alone? Where are the others? What happened to Nami? Luffy asked. All Yosaku could do was twitch again, holding out his hand to Luffy in a silent plea for help. Seeing this, Luffy was able to get Yosaku out of the shark, sending it swimming off into the water. When Yosaku was out and recovering from his shock, he was able to explain what had happened. It's not that we caught up with her, but from the direction Nami and Neki was heading, we figured out roughly where she was going. Yosaku told him, hugging a blanket tied around him that one of the chefs brought him. I see. We can bring her back then, laying in front of Yosaku. Well, if what we're thinking is right, her destination is a crazy place. In any case, we need your help, Luffy and Ikki. Please, come with me. The bounty hunter pleaded. Without any hesitation, Luffy nodded. Okay, I don't really get it, but got it. I'll come with you, Luffy affirmed, standing up with Yosaku and walking out of the giant hole the shark had caused. Outside, Sanji was leaning against the Baratie's railing, lighting a cigarette. Wait, he called as Luffy and Yosaku passed. Luffy hummed, stopping but not turning to look at Sanji. We both have foolish dreams. In order to achieve my goal, the all blue. Sanji started, Luffy having a feeling he knew where this was headed. Sanji, he said, trying to stop the smile from coming in case he was wrong, though he did turn his head slightly to the side, still not quite looking at the chef yet. Yeah, I'll come along on your journey to become king of the pirates, the chef said, stepping away from the railing and looking at Luffy's back, hands stuffed in his pockets. What? Luffy asked, now fully turning his head to look at him. I'll be the cook for your ship. Is that okay or not? Sanji asked, and even though he looked calm, Luffy could feel he was a little nervous to ask. Finally, Luffy let the giant D smile spread across his face, pumping out his fists in excitement. It's okay, all right, he cheered, Yosaku running up beside him in equal excitement. I'm happy for you, Luffy and Ikki, he cheered as well. Yeah, Luffy yelled, grabbing Yosaku's arms as the two began jumping in joy together. Yay, yay, we gotta cook. We'll have good food, they cheered, spinning in circles as they did. So that's how it is, everyone. Sorry for causing you all sorts of trouble, Sanji said, addressing the chefs who were watching on. I don't like it, I wanted to kick you out of here myself. And you decided so easily? Patty remarked with a scowl, arms crossed over his chest. Sorry for making you resort to bad acting, Sanji said next, surprising them. You knew, Patty cried. I could hear everything since you're all stupid, the blonde quipped. What? That is to say, you're willing to go that far to kick me out,
Huh, you damn geezer, Sanji dared, though his expression never changed. Why do you always have to talk like that? You bastard, Patty yelled, raising a fist, but Zeph holding a hand out stopped him from continuing. HMPH. That's right, little brat. I don't like kids to begin with. Not a single day passed where I didn't regret letting a useless one live, you damn brat. Zeph answered with a glare. Ha, fine by me, you damn geezer, enjoy the rest of your life to the utmost. You still need more? A chef asked incredulously as he stuffed a bag to the brim with meat. Yeah, give me more meat, Luffy said as he held the bag open for the two chefs filling it. Just how many days will you be at sea? One asked, continuing to fill the bag as best he could with how full it was. Don't know, Luffy replied simply with a shrug. Kid. Hearing and feeling Zeph behind him, Luffy perked up and turned to look at him. Oh, old man, he said in way of greeting, wondering what the man wanted. Do you want to take this? It's a record of my 1-year journey in the Grand Line. I understand that even though you've sailed it with the Whitebeards before, you've never done it on your own. Zeph offered, holding out said logbook to Luffy, who smiled. Don't need it. At his words, Zeph laughed. I knew it. With that, Zeph turned and walked off, Luffy immediately turning his attention back to the fridge of meat. I want that marbled meat, too, enough already. Luffy and Yosaku sat on the boat that the chefs had provided them as they waited for Sanji to join them. The bag of food that Luffy had gotten from the chefs was inside the cabin and everything was all set and ready for them to go. Cook Aniki sure is taking time. Yosaku mumbled as he and Luffy stared at the doors of the Baratie. All of the chefs had assembled out on the deck to see them off, and even they were beginning to wonder where the blonde chef was. And then finally, he appeared. He took slow, casual steps up to the doorway, and after a small pause, he stepped out onto the deck. This is for my long-standing grudge. Be prepared, Sanji. Patty and Carne yelled as they moved into action at once. They both had oversized spoons in their hands and were attempting to hit the blonde from behind. It was useless, however, because Sanji quickly dropped his things onto the floor and ducked out of the way. In a swift movement, Sanji balanced on his hands, spinning his legs out and kicking both Patty and Carne in the face, knocking them bloody onto the deck. With that done, the chef picked his things back up and casually walked away towards the boat. There's no way you guys can defeat him, the chef muttered to Patty and Carne, shaking his head. Everyone else was silent as Sanji walked through them and to the boat. Yosaku and Luffy were waiting in. Luffy could feel that everyone was tense, but there was the underlying bittersweet feeling that people felt whenever they said goodbye to friends or family. It was the same in Sanji, and even though the blonde looked indifferent, Luffy could feel the turmoil of bitter sadness and longing, and even further underneath that was excitement. Let's go, Sanji said as he placed his things inside the boat. You don't have to say goodbye? Luffy asked knowingly, glancing behind Sanji to the chefs. That's okay, Sanji said with a small smile now, preparing himself to get into the boat. He hadn't even got 1 foot inside when his name was being called, surprising him and making him freeze.
Sanji, don't catch a cold. Luffy's smile widened as he looked up at Zeph, who was watching with a smile of his own from the upper deck of the Baratie. Sanji's face morphed from surprise to struggling not to cry in an instant, his sadness and love increasing. It wasn't long before there were tears streaming down his face.
Owner Zeph, he cried, turning and kneeling down on the Baratie's battered deck, his head to the ground. Thank you for all the damn things you've done for me over all these years. I'll never forget your kindness. For the rest of my life, he cried gratefully. You asshole, I'll miss you, damn it. I'll miss you. Sanji raised his head to see that everyone else was crying now too. I'll miss you too. I feel sad, damn it. You idiots, men should part without a word. Zeph said, and even he was wiping his tears, smiling down happily to them. With everyone successfully getting their emotions out, Sanji stood back up and got into the boat, Luffy smiling widely.
Let's go. Set sail. The team cheered, arms outstretched.
I'll see you again, you damn bastards, Sanji cried, waving both arms to the chefs as the boat began sailing off, smiling as big as he could. Luffy laughed joyously, waving to them as well. Some time passed since the three left the Baratie, and Luffy had taken to relaxing on the ship's bow, hat over his eyes as he lay back. Sanji and Yosaku were lounging on the deck a few feet away, neither making a move to do anything else. Wah, the weather's so great, Luffy said happily with a stretch, sitting up.
It's so much nicer than the New World. I don't think it's rained or stormed once since I've been here. He continued, jumping off the bow and running to the railing, looking out at the sea with a big smile.
The East Blue's so peaceful, but that means everyone here is weak too. Oh well, we're heading to the Grand Line, so there'll be stronger guys there, and I can't wait to go back, Luffy said loudly, talking more to himself than to his two companions. Nay, where do you think the Grand Line is? That way? Or maybe it's that way? This way? That way? Luffy asked, jumping all around the ship and looking in different directions, his energy endless. You're annoying. Sit still, will ya? Sanji asked, smoking a cigar. Fee bounce around. Sorry. But we finally have a cook, so we just need to get Nami back, and then we're finally going back to the Grand Line. Luffy cheered, raising his arms again. Nami-san, huh? Just remembering her beautiful visage makes me happy. How I can't wait to see her again. Sanji all but purred, the smoke from his cigarette changing to hearts.
Nay, Yosaku. We're almost to where Nami is, right? Luffy asked as he went to sit on the railing, and it was then he realized that Yosaku was practically a human-shaped ball of anxiety.
You guys are soft-minded. Too soft-minded, don't you get it? Minute by minute we're heading right for the infamous Arlong. Big sis eyes were glued to Arlong's picture when she saw it. She wasn't her normal self. Nami and Eki plans to take down Arlong and collect his 20 million berry bounty. She may already be inside his compound as we speak, Yosaku said, his tone dropping low and eyes narrowed. Luffy didn't like all the anxiety and fear in the man, so he tried ignoring it, stretching as he looked to Sanji.
Well, let's have some food. Luffy decided. Yeah, Sanji agreed with a smile, causing Yosaku to cry. Don't tell me you guys never heard of Arlong. The bounty hunter exclaimed in disbelief. Arlong, who's that? Sanji asked. Never heard of him, Luffy said next, face blank. There was a part of him that thought the name was familiar though, like maybe he had heard of him, but where? And why? If Arlong was an East Blue pirate, then there was no way he would have ever heard anything about him.
Alright, listen up, I guess I'll just have to fill you in about everything. Arlong is a fishman who used to rampage throughout the Grand Line. Yosaku began, pacing back and forth in front of Sanji and Luffy. Fishman? Sanji asked, not having seen one before.
A fishman from the Grand Line. Luffy muttered to himself, head tilting back and forth in thought, eyebrows creasing.
Say, I hear the mermaids on Fishman Island in the Grand Line are absolutely beautiful, Sanji mused. Eyes shaped as hearts again as he blushed at the thought.
They're pretty cool. Shirahoshi's really nice, but she cries a lot. Luffy said to Sanji with a smile.
Shirahoshi? Who's that? Is it a beautiful mermaid just as I imagined? Stunning and graceful in the water? Sanji pictured, hands clasped together in front of him and his blush darkening. Shirahoshi's the princess. My brothers and I helped her and now we're friends with her and her brothers. Luffy explained, smiling as he thought back to the fore.
A mermaid princess. Just imagine the type of beauty such a goddess would hold. Sanji exclaimed, all but fainting. In front of them, Yosaku was facepalming.
Stay focused, I'll explain from the very beginning. The reason the Grand Line's called a pirate graveyard in the first place is because of the three powers that reign over it. One of which is the 7 warlords of the sea. Simply put, they're government-authorized pirates. Yosaku explained. He continued on to explain why the Shichibukai were allowed to exist and that they were all extremely powerful. He told them that Mihawk was one of the Shichibukai, which interested Luffy. He had never paid much attention to Shichibukai and Yonkos, he just knew that they were all strong. To hear that Mihawk was one didn't surprise him all that much. So, one of the 7 warlords is Jinbei, a fishman pirate boss. And the fishman Arlong is a pirate on par with him who used to commit atrocity after atrocity in the Grand Line. Yosaku continued, piquing Luffy's interest again when he mentioned Jinbei. Arlong has ruled over 20 towns since coming to the East Blue. His strength is far superior to Don Krieg's, the bounty hunter exclaimed fearfully. Really, that's great. I might actually have a fun fight, Luffy said, happy to hear this, which is not what Yosaku expected. What? No, it's a bad thing. Arlong is strong, much stronger than Krieg. There's no way you could. It was at that moment Yosaku remembered who Luffy was, and as he stared at Luffy's unwavering smile, the young teen practically vibrating with excitement, he realized that this may actually be an easy fight for the captain. Why would Nami-san go to this guy all by herself if he's so dangerous? Sanji asked in confusion. He didn't know much about Nami yet, but he had a feeling that she wouldn't throw herself into this kind of danger unnecessarily, especially by herself. I told you, she's after the bounty on his head, Yasuo insisted. No, who knows? Maybe Nami-san is actually a mermaid. Especially given how lovely she is, Sanji cooed as he imagined Nami as a mermaid. She is, she never told me, Luffy exclaimed, a little annoyed to be hearing this. Are you guys even listening? Yosaku cried again. Yeah, there's a strong fishman, right? We get it, Luffy said, summing it up the best way he knew how. No, you don't get it. You don't know how strong fishmen are, Yosaku said, worried for the two. Sure I do. Namor's a fishman, and he and I sparred all the time. There was this one time that Ruda and I had this cool idea to use him as a target. Shishishi, Ace, and Sabo were so mad at us for that. Luffy laughed, remembering back to that day with a fond smile. Don't worry, Yosaku. Everything's gonna be fine. We'll help Nami with whatever she needs, and I'll beat up this fishman guy no problem. Luffy finished with a shrug, still smiling. Anyways, let's have some food, Sanji said as he stood up, having heard all he needed to hear. Yeah, food. Luffy cheered. Food? Yosaku asked, not expecting that. What do you guys want? Sanji asked as he rolled up his sleeves in preparation, grinning to them. Meat things with bones in it. I want sautéed bean sprouts. Luffy and Yosaku cheered with happy smiles. Alright, leave it to me, the chef said, turning to head inside and begin cooking. I'll be done in no time. Meat and bean sprouts, he muttered to himself, heading inside and leaving Luffy and Yosaku outside. Having a cook really is great, Luffy mused where he stood, hands on his hips. Why yeah, Yaskao agreed. Meat, a jumbo serving of meat. And bean sprouts for me, a jumbo serving. You're great, Sanji Aniki. This is top-notch seasoning, Yosaku praised as he shoveled food into his mouth as fast as possible. I want to make dinner for Nami-san more than I do for you guys, Sanji told him, drinking from his glass. I hope you manage to get Nami and Eki to join again, Yosaku said with a hopeful smile, finishing off his plate. Luffy, who had reached the bone of his meat, looked to Yosaku. We will. She's our navigator. She's going to the Grand Line with us, he remarked as if fact, reaching for the last piece of meat. Before he could grab it though, Yosaku snatched it up for himself. That's mine. You just ate one, let me have one too. But it's mine. Come on, just one. No, give it back. Come on. Let me have it. Quit rockin' the damn boat, Sanji yelled furiously, having difficulty pouring himself another drink with Luffy chasing Yosaku around. You're going to make me spill this fine alcohol, he muttered, but Luffy was more focused on something else. Letting Yosaku eat the meat, he turned to look at the water with a blank face. Something's down there, Sanji stated as he walked up beside Luffy, also looking into the water. What? Yosaku asked in confusion. It's big, Luffy noted, watching as a shadow appeared in the water. Right after saying this, the thing appeared, towering over their tiny boat. A sea monster. Yosaku cried fearfully. It's a cow. It's huge, Luffy called in amazement as he looked at the animal. A cow? They don't swim. It's a hippo, Sanji corrected as he took a drag of his cigarette. What's something like this doing in the East Blue? This is a Grand Line creature, Yosaku asked, terrified as he stared up at the sea cow. After he said this, the sea cow lowered its head to get a better view of them. Huh? What's this guy doing? Luffy asked. He could feel that the sea comething, but animal emotions were harder to read than humans, so Luffy didn't know what the sea cow was expecting. He's after the food, Yosaku realized, looking to the table that still had plates of food on it. What? Luffy cried, not wanting to give the delicious food up. Hurry and give it to him. He'll flip the boat over, the bounty hunter yelled, but before he could even get a start on doing that, Luffy flung his fist at the cow, knocking it backward into the water. Stay away from my food, he yelled, pointing a finger at the cow. You did it, you're incredible, Luffy and Ikki, Yosaku cheered, only for the sea cow to rise back out of the water, clearly in rage. Looks like you make it mad, Yosaku cried. Another one, huh? Luffy asked, readying another, more powerful, punch. You dumbass, don't beat up someone who's hungry for no reason, Sanji chastised, kicking Luffy over before the rubber man could attack again. He's probably hurt or something and can't catch his own food, right? Here, eat up. No need to hold back, Sanji said, holding out a plate of food to the cow with a smile. What love? Yosaku uttered as from where he was standing. Luffy, rubbing his side on the floor, watched as the cow's emotions changed from nervous to contemplative and then it opened its mouth. Die, you damn thing, Sanji roared, kicking the cow away much like how Luffy had punched it. What are you doing? What happened to that love? Yosaku yelled in confused anger. That bastard just tried to eat me, too, Sanji remarked, as if it was obvious. A roar from the water drew their attention as the sea cow ascended from the water once more, even angrier than last time as it swam straight towards their boat. Here he comes. He's gonna sink the boat, Yosaku cried again, tears falling in fear. That's it. Luffy was stopped from his punch again when Sanji held out a hand. Hold on, I'll handle it, the chef said before running up to higher ground on top of the cabin. Using this height, he jumped into the air. Collie or shoot. Flipping his leg back, he kicked the cow right in the neck, stunning it and making it fall, again, into the water. Damn hippo, Sanji muttered as he landed back on the boat, he and Luffy moving to sit back down at the table while Yosaku watched, dumbfounded. Alright, back to food, Luffy cheered. That was good exercise, Sanji said pleasantly. These guys are crazy, Yosaku muttered in realization. Of course, with Luffy, crazy is normal. Which is how, in a matter of a half hour, the boat they had gotten from the chefs back at the Baratie was now being pulled along by the sea cow they had just defeated. Wahoo! Faster, to Arlong Park. Go, to Arlong Park, Luffy cheered with his smile, pointing ahead of them as the wind blew past him harshly. He was standing, quite recklessly, on the bow of the ship as it cut through the water with ease. Behind him, Yosaku was clinging to the railing, tears in his eyes as he cried out in fear, while Sanji was unfazed, standing on the deck and holding back his hair that was whipping around his face from the wind. Hang on Nami, the young captain said, his smile lowering to a grin of determination. It took a little while, but eventually they were able to see their destination up ahead. Excitement filled Luffy as he saw the tall building in front of him, and already he could feel faint emotions coming from the island. It was more impressions than actual emotion, but from what he was feeling, it wasn't good. There it is. Arlong Park. Luffy murmured softly. It was then that he realized the sea cow pulling their boat was beginning to slow down and zigzag. Oi, don't get tired, cow, Luffy whined. They were already so close, and now the cow was going to poop out on them. Yeah, Sanji and Iki's kicks must have really taken their toll, Yosaku guessed, finger on his chin as he eyed Sanji from the corner of his eye. Hey, not that way, to the left. That building, Luffy called to the cow, pointing towards the tall building. However, the sea cow didn't, or couldn't, listen and ended up veering right. Because of this, instead of going right up to the building, they ended up heading towards a bunch of trees, as well as a formation of rocks sticking out of the water. Seeing this, Yosaku began screaming in fear that they were going to crash, and Sanji's eyes were wide. Luffy only had time to blink in realization before the cow rammed into the boulders, sending the boat flying off above the island. It's almost like we're flying, Luffy cried. Not like, we're flying, dumbass, Sanji yelled, he and Yosaku trying to hold on while Luffy continued standing precariously on the bow. We're falling, Yosaku cried nervously, watching as the trees below them quickly got closer and closer, until they were falling beneath them and crashing to the ground. Instead of that being the end though, the boat began sliding across the forest floor, knocking down any trees in its path. Landing successful, Luffy yelled out with a wide smile, laughing as he held onto his hat. Now would not be a good time for it to go flying. Suddenly, he felt a familiar presence as well as the quickly rising fear in front of them, and his smile fell. Yo, Zoro, Luffy called in greeting, only for Zoro to immediately be run over by their boat. They continued sliding across the floor right out of the forest and across a rice field, and then, finally, they crashed into a cliffside, stopping their adventure. We made it! We made it! Luffy cheered, pumping his fists happily in the air as he chanted. What the hell are you guys doing? Zoro's muffled yell asked. Beneath the broken wood, Zoro poked his head out, clearly angry. What do you mean? We're here to get Nami. Have you still not found her? Oh yeah. And what about Usopp and Johnny? Luffy asked as he dusted off his clothing. Sanji was sitting behind him, his hair windblown and a look of exhaustion on his face. Behind them both, Yosaku was twitching, only his legs sticking out of the rubble that was their boat. Usopp, that's right, there's no time to be loafing around here, Zoro cried as he stood up and began running off. The panic in the swordsman confused Luffy as he turned to watch him run. What's wrong? Luffy called after him. Zoro paused in his run long enough to turn to them and answer. That bastard's been caught by Arlong. We gotta hurry before he's killed, Zoro yelled back to them. He was killed. At the sound of Johnny's voice, everyone turned in surprise. What? Zoro asked, blinking in shock. Johnny, who was quite a few feet away from them, fell to his knees, a look of despair on his face. We're too late. Usopp Aniki is dead. He was killed by Nami and Eki. Johnny cried. At his words, everyone was stunned into silence. Luffy could feel that he was telling the truth, or at least what he believed to be the truth, and that only made it all the more unbelievable to Luffy. Yeah, it's terrible. She was a witch all along. She's been winning Arlong's favor so she could have the treasure buried in Kokoyashi village all to herself. She'll calmly kill people for it, too. She's scum, rotten to the core. She had us fooled the entire time. Before Johnny could say any more, Luffy rushed forward, grabbing the collar of Johnny's shirt and pulling him up into the air. You, try saying that again. I'll kick your ass, Luffy roared in anger. He knew that Nami hadn't been deceiving them, at least, not in the way Johnny was implying. He knew Nami had been hiding something, but he doubted it was how Johnny was assuming, and to hear the man bad-mouthing his navigator pissed him off. Stop, Luffy. This has nothing to do with Johnny, Zoro said calmly from the sidelines. If you don't want to believe me, then don't, but I saw it with my own 2 eyes. She killed Usopp Aniki. Again, Johnny was speaking the truth, and that only confused and pissed off Luffy all the more as he cut the man off by shaking him. Quit saying nonsense. Nami would never kill Usopp. We're friends, he shouted, barely keeping back the urge to fight Johnny. He knew Nami couldn't kill anyone, not after what he'd seen of her back with Buggy. Hearing and feeling that Johnny was telling the truth about seeing her kill Usopp, yet knowing the navigator and how she felt, Luffy didn't know what to believe. But I. Johnny, faced with Luffy's enraged face, couldn't find it in himself to speak anymore. Who are friends, Luffy? A new voice asked from behind them. Everyone looked to see Nami standing there with a fierce look on her face, and immediately the rage left Luffy. Now he would be able to get some answers. Nami, he said in surprise, dropping Johnny and letting the man fall to the ground as he turned to look at the redhead. Why are you here? She asked coldly, arms crossed over her chest. Despite her cold demeanor, Luffy could feel her conflicting emotions fighting inside her. "What are you talking about? You're our friend. We came to get you," Luffy answered honestly, noting the twinge of regret and longing in the girl. "You're a problem," she answered instead, and if Luffy didn't have his ability to feel emotions, he'd probably buy her act. "Nami?" he asked instead, wondering where she was going with this. "Friends, don't make me laugh, you're just a pathetic bunch of people cooperating with each other," she told them, her expression never changing for an instant, but the same couldn't be said for her turbulent emotions. Not to mention, he could feel her lies. "Damn you. You killed him? I saw it with my own eyes." Luffy wasn't able to stop Johnny as he ran forward, pointing an accusatory finger at the navigator, tears in his eyes. How dare you kill Usopp and Ikki?" he cried, and Luffy knew now he would finally get the answer on what had happened to the long-nosed man. As much as he longed to stretch out his haki and look for the man, he wasn't good enough yet to span it too far, and from what he could sense, Usopp wasn't there. "So what? Why not kill me as revenge, then?" Nami suggested with a small smirk. Johnny obviously hadn't been expecting that answer and faltered. "What?" he asked in surprise, his finger falling. "I'll tell you this much. Right now, Arlong wants to kill Roronoa Zoro and his men. Because Zoro just had to be stupid. No matter how monstrously strong you guys are, you're no match for real monsters. If you hang around this island, you will wind up being killed. Not that it matters to me, though," Nami replied, her smile still on her face as she spoke. Her cool look is so enchanting too. "Hi, Nami-san, it's me. Do you remember me? Let's set sail together," Sanji declared, waving his arms in the air and hearts in his eyes. "Shut up, you're just complicating thin irritation. Say what? Love is always a hurricane." It didn't seem that Zoro was listening anymore though, the swordsman looking back towards Nami to the chagrin of the chef. "Oi, listen when people are talking." Again, Zoro ignored him, instead asking something that was on everyone's mind. "Where's Usopp?" Zoro asked. "Bottom of the ocean," Nami replied curtly, and Luffy was relieved to feel that there was only a hint of the truth in that statement, suggesting that Usopp was no longer there, and in turn, not dead. "Damn it! Cut the crap!" Before Zoro could run forward and attack Nami with his swords, Sanji stopped him, kicking towards the swordsman who ducked under it. "A swordsman would even strike a lady, Roronoa Zoro?" Sanji asked, a newly lit cigarette in his mouth. "What? You don't even know what's going on here. Back off," Zoro growled out in annoyance. "I guess I'd be irritated too, coming right off an insulting defeat," Sanji taunted instead of moving. "Huh? Oi. Watch that mouth of yours," Zoro yelled, one sword still in hand. "Mind your own damn business, you damn bastard," Sanji yelled right back, neither budging in their resolve. "Bros, this is no time for you two to be going at it," Yosaku cried, waving his arms beside the two in a desperate attempt to stop their arguing. "That's right, if you're going to fight, could you do it off the island? Don't butt anymore into this land's affairs, you outsiders," Nami demanded, only slightly annoyed now herself. Luffy could feel that she was more concerned than angry, like she wanted them to believe, and that only made him wonder why she was acting in front of them. He could feel that most of her words were lies. He could feel that her words held a hint of urgency to them, the woman wanting them to leave for some reason other than what she wanted them to think. The concern made him think she was worried for their safety should they stay, and if that was the case, he knew that concern was misplaced. "Do you still not get it? The one and only reason I got close to you was for the money? Now that you're flat broke, you have no charm whatsoever." After all the half-truths and misleading words, Luffy felt that those last words were straight-out lies, clear as day. "You can have your ship back, so just go find a navigator somewhere and go into the Grand Line. Go look for your One Piece or whatever. Just get the hell out of here. You're an eyesore," she all but yelled now, turning her body slightly away from them in preparation to leave. There was a pause after her words where they all waited for what she would say next, none of them so much as moving. "Goodbye," she finally said, a frown on her face and her eyes shadowed by her hair. The sadness and longing doubled in the redhead, surprising Luffy with their intensity. "Nami," he said softly. There was another pause as everyone stood staring at each other, and then finally, Luffy closed his eyes, falling onto his back. "Luffy and Ikki," Johnny exclaimed in surprise. "I'm going to sleep," Luffy declared, putting his hands behind his head to cushion it slightly. "Sleep? In this situation? And right in the middle of the road?" Yosaku asked, stepping towards Luffy a little more. "I don't plan on leaving the island, and I'm not interested in what's happening on the island. And I'm a little sleepy. I'm going to sleep," Luffy explained, eyes still closed. "Huh? Luffy and Ikki." All around him, everyone slumped at the realization that the straw-hatted captain was serious. Fine, whatever, go ahead and die," Nami screamed before running off. "Nah," Sanji didn't even finish saying the woman's name, taking the cigarette out of his mouth as he watched her run. On the ground, Luffy was already fast asleep. "He's alive. Actually, I think he's dead now." Luffy woke up slowly, sound drifting to his ears and his heightened sense picking up a familiar smell. Usopp! Luffy cried, sitting up and looking over to see a badly bruised Usopp sitting in between Zoro and Sanji. Running over to the man, Luffy pulled him close, shaking him. "Did Nami do this to you?" he asked worriedly. He knew Nami hadn't killed Usopp, but that didn't mean he'd put it past her to hurt him. "Sorry, me and him did that," Sanji admitted, pointing to Zoro who stood beside him. "You did it," Zoro said defiantly. "Oh Luffy, you're here?" Usopp asked when Luffy finally stopped shaking him. "Yeah, just got here," Luffy answered with a nod and a smile. "Oh, I came too, good to work with you," Sanji added with a smile. Hearing the familiar voice, Usopp jumped to his feet, getting in Sanji's face. "Someday I'm gonna kill you," Usopp said determinedly, annoyed that he'd gotten hurt from Sanji and Zoro. "Oh, you're pretty alright after all," Sanji noted, still smiling as he patted Usopp's arm. "Shut up," Usopp cried, eyes bugging with rage. "Speaking of which, we heard Nami killed you," Zoro said, arms crossed over his chest as he looked at the not dead Usopp in front of him. Usopp asked, obviously hearing this news for the first time. "Oh yeah, Nami was lying about that. Johnny wasn't lying though, which was confusing, but I knew Nami wouldn't kill you, Usopp," Luffy said, patting the man on the back and smiling widely. "Wait, you knew all along and didn't say anything?" Zoro asked in annoyance. Luffy laughed at that, rubbing the back of his head. "I was tired," he said with a shrug instead. At his words, Zoro facepalmed, muttering something under his breath that Luffy didn't quite hear. "Anyway, what did happen then? Johnny seemed pretty adamant over the fact that you were dead," Sanji said, curious as to how he could have mistaken that. "In a way, he wasn't lying. But it's actually the opposite. Nami saved my life," Usopp said, before launching into the tale of how Nami had saved him, stabbing her own hand instead to make it look as if he'd been stabbed. "So that's how Nami pretended to kill me and let me escape. It looks to me like there's a reason she's in a fishman pirate group," Usopp said with a frown. "Obviously," Sanji muttered, but was ignored. "So, what do we do? Do we storm Arlong Park?" Zoro asked, ready to fight at a moment's notice. Hold on. We gotta find out what the story with Nami is first," Usopp said, not wanting to do anything too hasty. "It's no use either way," a new voice said. Looking, everyone saw a blue-haired girl standing a few feet away, a hand on her hip as she looked at them. "No matter what you guys do, Arlong's rule won't come to an end," she continued. "Nijiko!" Usopp exclaimed, obviously knowing the girl. Seeing this, Luffy turned to look at the long-nosed man, pointing to the girl. "Who's she?" he asked. "Nami's big sister," Usopp answered simply. Nami-san's older sister. "No wonder she's so beautiful," Sanji cooed. "What do you mean it's no use?" Zoro asked, once again ignoring Sanji as he addressed Nijiko. "Please, don't get any more involved with this village. Leave Nami alone. I'll explain the circumstances," she said to them. "Circumstances?" Sanji asked, calming down. "You mean why she joined Arlong's group?" Usopp asked, interest piqued. "Yes. You'll feel like leaving the island once you hear it," she said confidently, never changing her relaxed stance. "Alright. Let's hear this reason or whatever, then." Usopp conceded, only for Luffy to immediately deny it. "I'll pass," the straw-hatted teen said, beginning to walk away. Hey," Usopp called, watching as he walked away, past Nijiko. "I don't care about her past," Luffy responded, not looking back as he walked. "Where are you going, Luffy?" Sanji asked, also not making a move to follow after Luffy. "For a walk." The simple response was met with Usopp's rising surprise. "A walk? You're not gonna listen to this?" he asked. "No, I'll pass," Luffy said, still walking as he spoke. No one else said anything to Luffy, letting him walk off wherever he was going. Luffy didn't really know where to go, however. He'd only been on this island for a few hours at the most, and most pent sleeping. He spent a while wandering around aimlessly and eventually had circled right back to where he had started. Of course, he didn't notice this as he was focused more on the path than his surroundings, and because of this, it was only due to his haki and enhanced abilities that he noticed 3 fishmen standing in front of him. "I wonder if they know Jinbei." Luffy mused quietly to himself as he walked up to them. He didn't slow down, didn't stop, and instead just continued to walk right through the fishmen who were standing tall in front of him. When he didn't stop or react, he felt the fishmen's emotions change from confident and powerful to surprised and annoyed. "Oh oi, wait. You," the one in the middle called, turning to look at Luffy as he continued walking unhindered down the path. "Huh? You called?" Luffy asked, finally stopping to look at the fishmen. "Who are you? What are you doing on this island?" the middle one demanded to know, shaking his fist at Luffy. "What does it matter to you?" Luffy asked curiously. The annoyance and surprise left the fishman as he blinked at the straw-hatted teen. "Why yeah, you have a point," he realized, lowering his fist. "I'm Luffy. I'm taking a walk." Luffy decided to answer next. After all, the guy had asked. A walk? The surprise was back at Luffy's mundane answer. Obviously, the fishman hadn't been expecting it. Have fun, he called next with a smile, waving his 6 arms at Luffy, who was already beginning to walk away again. Where are you headed? The fishman called, curious. Heck if I know, Luffy answered, not looking back as he walked. He felt suspicion coming from the other 2 fishmen, the ones who had remained silent throughout the interaction, but they didn't act on it. If they knew who Luffy was, they weren't saying anything about it at the moment. Throughout his wandering, Luffy eventually managed to stumble across a town. He hadn't gotten very far into it, however, when he spotted a group of Marines, as well as a guy, walking right towards him. Sweating, he quickly glanced around him for someplace to hide and ducked in between 2 houses, peeking safely around the corner as he watched the group walk down the street. He didn't want to cause Nami any trouble, and that meant staying out of the Marines' sight so they didn't identify him as the notorious 11,097. Watching them pass, he couldn't help but notice that the man walking with the Marines had a pinwheel on his hat, intriguing him. Why does that old guy have a pinwheel on his head? He mumbled quietly to himself. So cool, he whispered next, smiling only slightly. Now that the Marines were gone, he deemed it safe to leave his cover and began walking down the street again. He walked down the end of the street before deciding to take a rest under a palm tree where he let himself relax, taking in the feelings of the townspeople around him. None of them were very relaxed, though. They were all worried, tense, anxious, fearful, and it made Luffy fidget uncomfortably. He hadn't noticed it before, too lost in his own thoughts to realize, but now that he did, he wanted the emotions gone. He didn't know what was causing them though, but he did recognize them to be the same feelings that Nami had had ever since he'd met her.
Trying to ignore the uncomfortable feelings, Luffy thought back to the guy with the Marines again. Arms behind his head, he looked to the sky.
A pinwheel, huh? A smile stretched across his face at his own thoughts. I thought up a good move, he said cheerfully to himself, only for that cheer to once again be interrupted by a sudden spike in fear, worry, and pain. Just as he was glancing over to its source, people began shouting. Doctor! Doctor! A familiar scent drifted to his nose, and across the street Luffy saw Nami and the pinwheel man from before standing there, people swarming around them. In the pinwheel guy's arms was Nami's sister, Nijiko, and from what Luffy could tell, the pain was coming from her. What is it, Gen-san? Nijiko's been shot. By who? The Navy. The loud shouting drifted over to Luffy and he frowned. He already hated the Marines, and with everything happening now, that hatred only increased. He could feel the grief, the anger, the betrayal oozing off of Nami, and all of the negative emotions were enough to put Luffy in a bad state of his own. His frown deepened and his fidgeting returned as he tried holding back his own tears of grief and anger. Before he could block the feelings out on his own, Nami was running off down the street, a fire in her eyes. Luffy could feel her rage just as strong as when she'd been standing in front of him, giving testament to how angry she was. Taking deep breaths, Luffy tried calming himself down, relaxing further against the tree. Nami didn't want him to interfere yet, so he wouldn't. He had managed to drift off again only to be woken up by the strong negative emotions again. The street was filled with people, Nami at the front of them and trying to calm them down. However, it proved unsuccessful as they ran past her with makeshift weapons in their hands. Luffy watched as Nami, holding a knife, fell to her knees and began crying, her frustration, anger, and grief all reaching their breaking point as she began stabbing herself in the arm over and over again. Feeling that enough was enough, Luffy stood from his tree and walked over to her, grabbing her wrist and stopping her from hurting herself any further. Luffy, she uttered weakly, tears falling down her face and blood dripping down her arm. Seeing that she wasn't hurting herself anymore, Luffy let go of her wrist and she dropped the knife, bracing herself as she leaned forward, hands on the ground and head hanging low. What do you want? You don't even know anything. You don't even know what's happened on this island for the past 8 years, she said bitterly, her words strained from her crying. Yeah, I don't. Luffy agreed monotonously. This has nothing to do with you. I told you, leave the damn island already, she cried, shoulders shaking and fingers digging into the dirt beneath her. Yeah, you told me, Luffy answered again, still not giving away his own emotions. Leave, I don't need you, leave, 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 leave. After clawing the dirt at Luffy as she repeated the word over and over, she finally stopped, sobbing into her hand and falling silent. I told you I know when people are lying, right? Luffy asked. There was another pause as Nami continued crying, but finally she raised her head. Luffy, help me, she said, turning to look at him finally. Taking off his hat and placing it on Nami's head, Luffy began walking away, only to stop a few steps. Of course I will, he screamed loudly, arms raised in the air as he did. Down the street, Zoro, Sanji and Usopp were all waiting and from behind him, Luffy could feel Nami's mixture of surprise and gratitude. Let's go, the team captain ordered, his 3 crewmates lifting their heads. Yeah, after the 3 agreed, the 4 of them began making their way to Arlong Park. Luffy, Zoro, Usopp, and Sanji all marched silently down the long road, none of them needing to say anything. After walking for a few minutes, they could see the crowd from earlier standing outside the gates of Arlong Park, and Luffy could feel their anger as well as hear them yelling. Without saying so much as a word, Luffy and his crew continued walking over to the group. "Here they come," Johnny exclaimed with a smile, he and Yosaku standing from where they had been sitting, guarding the doors. The two of them were both dirty and bleeding, obviously having gotten into a fight not too long ago. At Johnny's words, everyone turned to see who they were and saw the four pirates. "It's them," Nijiko said in disbelief. "Just who are they?" Pinwheelman asked. "If they can't handle them, then there's no hope for not only this island, but for the future of the entire East Blue," Yosaku exclaimed, holding his arm that was most like cases of those four men who are here to change destiny. "Burn their images into your eyes," Yosaku continued, everyone watching in a mixture of confusion and awe. "Move aside," Luffy ordered the crowd when they were close enough. Doing as he said, the crowd parted for him, Johnny and Yosaku moving aside as well. Crouching, Luffy glared at the gates keeping him from Arlong and pulled his fist back. Without saying a word, Luffy threw his fist forward, knocking the gates off their hinges and throwing them all the way to the opposite side of the fence. Seeing as the large gates were gone, there was now a giant hole in the fence where Luffy now stood. "What the?" a voice from inside Arlong Park exclaimed. Standing up from his crouched position, Luffy held up his fist, scanning the fishmen inside. "Which one of you is Arlong? Which one of you is Arlong?" Luffy demanded, his eyes looking over every single fishman. "Arlong," the one sitting in the chair asked, not even looking towards Luffy. "My name happens to be Arlong," he continued, identifying himself as the one Luffy wanted. "I'm Luffy," the young captain said as he walked forward towards the fishman. "Luffy? You wouldn't happen to be the 11,097 I've been hearing about, would you?" At Arlong's words, there was a multitude of whispers behind Luffy, the crowd finally recognizing him. "That's right," Luffy confirmed, shocking everyone even further. "That's him. He's here, the guy who likes taking walks," the one with 6 arms exclaimed. Luffy recognized him and the other two he was standing with as the 3 he'd seen earlier. "Hold it, you. Where do you think you're going? You need to run things by us first, kiddo, yeah. If you don't stop." In front of him, the fishmen all began speaking one after another, 2 of them blocking him from advancing any further towards Arlong and grabbing Luffy by the shoulders. It was clear that, despite knowing who Luffy was, the fishmen felt overconfident in their abilities in being able to take him down. It was really starting to piss him off that everyone kept underestimating him. "Move," Luffy growled, grabbing the 2 fishmen by their heads and knocking them into each other. When he felt their emotions muffle and was satisfied that they were unconscious, Luffy continued on towards Arlong. "What does a Whitebeard want with me?" Arlong asked. Luffy felt the surprise at the show of Luffy's strength, but the fishman didn't show it like his comrades did. Not even correcting him on the fact that he'd left the Whitebeards, Luffy reared back his fist again, coating it in haki before letting it fly right into Arlong's jaw. With a loud smack, Arlong was sent tumbling out of his chair and flying in the direction of the stone wall that was already damaged from the gate Luffy had knocked down earlier. When the fishman reached the wall, he collided into it with a loud crash, stone falling around him and dust clouding everyone's vision of him. When the dust finally did clear, Arlong was seen to be bleeding slightly from the corner of his mouth, his jaw already beginning to bruise lightly. "What the hell?" Arlong growled, anger clear on his face as he glared at Luffy. Luffy, who was now standing straight again, glared right back at Arlong, his glare easily more menacing than the fishman's. "Don't make our navigator cry," Luffy shouted, enraged. "Why, you? How dare you insult Arlong-san? Whitebeard pirate or not, we'll take you down." Luffy didn't even attempt moving away from the multiple fishmen jumping out of the water and running towards him. It was unnecessary because, with the sound of running footsteps, Sanji was there, kicking all of the fishmen away before they could get close enough to even attempt touching Luffy. "Butt out, small fries," Sanji yelled, sending everyone he kicked falling unconscious on the ground. "Yeesh. You just had to run on ahead by yourself," Sanji muttered as he walked over to Luffy, standing beside him. "It's not like I'd lose on my own. Sorry to worry you," Luffy said, knowing he was strong enough to win this fight, but feeling that the chef had been worried regardless. "Idiot. When did I say I was worried about you? I just don't want you hogging all the prey," Sanji said as he turned to look at Arlong. Luffy realized that he hadn't told Sanji about his abilities yet, but decided now wasn't a good time to bring that up. "I don't mind if you hog them all, though," Usopp stuttered as he walked up, trying to look confident yet failing due to the sweat pouring down his face. "You sure got some guts," Zoro said as he walked in behind Usopp. "That's him. He's the unknown swordsman," the fishman that had recognized Luffy exclaimed, pointing at Zoro with wide eyes. "It's Roronoa Zoro," the blue fishman beside him said, his arms crossed over his chest.
Yeah, I thought so. He tricked me. Look, sign, and hinker. No, hook, Line and sinker, right. The octopus fishman said, more to himself than to the others.
Look, it's Long Nose, another realized once they saw Usopp. Didn't Nami kill him? The octopus fishman asked in surprise. The bastard's still alive, which means, the fishman behind the octopus started. I knew it. The girl was a traitor, just as I suspected, the blue one said with a frown. Arlong, who had been silent this entire time, grinned. Your navigator, huh? Sorry, but I don't recall making a whitebeard navigator cry. Arlong said, still sitting amongst the rubble of the wall he'd crashed into. I'm not a whitebeard pirate anymore. I'm starting my own crew, and Nami's our navigator. Luffy explained, crossing his arms over his chest. I see. You were after Nami from the very start. Arlong muttered, his eyes scanning over the 4 pirates in front of him. But, I think you have your information wrong. Nami is my navigator, not some former whitebeard pirate's navigator. What can you 4 inferior creatures possibly do, anyhow? Arlong demanded. Having heard enough, the octopus fishman stalked over to them. Fool, you're not worth Arlong's time. He'll be more than enough, he exclaimed, turning to look at the water beside them and using his elongated mouth as a horn, calling for something. The ground beneath them began shaking as whatever the fishman had called made its way to them. What's going on? Usopp asked, very clearly freaking out. The waves began moving turbulently as the power of whatever was coming shook them all. Where Arlong sat, rocks began falling due to the shaking ground. The whole lot of you will be food for him. Come out, Momo. At the fishman's words, a whirlpool formed in the water before Momo began rising from it.
AA monster. It's the Grand Line monster that destroyed the town of Gosa. Usopp shrieked, eyes bugging out from behind his goggles that he had put on.
As the water fell from the large creature and began settling back down, they all saw a large sea cow with a bump on its head and tears in its eyes crying. It's here. Despite the sea cow looking a little worse for wear, Usopp was still terrified by it. Sanji and Luffy, however, were not. Oh, it's him? Luffy asked as he turned to look at Momo, who was staring back with wide, terrified eyes. He's a friend of the fishmen, Sanji asked next. The cow's tears began falling faster as he remembered the 2 of them beating him up. Knowing he couldn't do anything against them, Momo turned and began swimming away. Wait, Momo. Where are you going? Hey, stop, get back here, Momo, the octopus fishman shouted after the sea cow, flailing his 6 arms at him. A spike in rage from Arlong had Luffy turning to look back at the sitting fishman, only to see him glaring fiercely in Momo's direction. Momo, what are you doing? He asked menacingly. The sea cow immediately froze in fear, eyes blown open wide and sweating. Though, if you want to run away, I won't stop you. Understand, Momo? Arlong continued with a vicious grin, still radiating anger. At once, the cow's demeanor changed from fearful to angry determination. Turning around, Momo reared his body out of the water and opened his mouth, showing them all his long sharp teeth. It's coming, Usopp screeched in terror, waving his hands in a vain attempt at stopping the advancing monster. Alright, follow after Momo, the fishmen announced as they pulled out their weapons. I'm sorry, Usopp repeated over and over. Meanwhile, Zoro was pulling out his sword, and Sanji was grinning, both of them unafraid of Momo. I'll do it. This is a waste of time, Luffy told them, stomping his feet into the concrete ground, leaving him immobilized. He began twisting his body up in preparation, and once he deemed himself twisted enough he stretched his arms out to grab Momo by the horns. Seeing this, the advancing fishmen stopped in their advancing. What's he planning this time? Sanji asked from where he watched. Nothing good, Zoro answered knowingly. His arms stretched, a fishman said in surprise. So the Marines were right. He has a devil fruit, Arlong muttered to himself. What? Who cares? Go. Still overconfident in themselves, the fishmen began moving once more towards the immobile Luffy. What concerned Zoro and Sanji wasn't the fact that Luffy looked as if he was going to be attacked, rather it looked like Luffy was preparing his own attack. Whoa! Run! Zoro yelled to Sanji. What's he doing? The chef asked, his visible eye widening. I dunno, but it doesn't look good, Zoro answered before running off with Sanji. Gum gum. Pinwheel, Luffy shouted, untwisting his body and bringing Momo along with him. Using the giant sea monster, Luffy spun him around into the nearby fishmen, knocking them all down until finally, he flung Momo off into the water. I didn't come here to take on these guys. The one I want to beat up is you, Luffy shouted, turning to point at Arlong. The man, still seething in rage, grinned. That's perfect, then. I was just thinking of killing you now, Arlong growled out. That was dangerous, you, Sanji barked, kicking Luffy lightly in the head as he reprimanded him. Are you trying to kill us too? Usopp yelled next, still terrified. Huh? Luffy said to himself, slowly swaying his body back and forth, his feet still stuck firmly in the ground. What are you doing? Usopp shouted. How dare you hurt our brothers? It would seem we need to fight, too. Looks like we need to teach them the difference between our species. The three Luffy had met on the road said. Seeing this, Zoro grinned. The main forces finally show up, huh? The swordsman said eagerly while Usopp slowly backed away. Arlong-san. Please stay there quietly. If you go on a mad rampage, you'll tear all of Arlong Park into pieces. We'll take care of these guys, they said one after another, working themselves up. Yeah, do as you wish, Arlong said with a smile of his own, relaxing in the rubble as he watched. Hey, there. There's something Luffy was cut off when the octopus fishman began making another loud noise. That octopus is up to something. Zoro noticed, his attention leaving Luffy and turning to the fishman. Octopus is best with a little salt and sliced up. Add some olive oil and paprika and it's a perfect snack while drinking. Sanji told them with a grin of his own. Luffy, meanwhile, was waving his hand at the two. Hey, I'm kind of in trouble. Hear me out, Luffy said again, trying to get their attention. Take this, Zero Vision, Hachi Ink Jet. The octopus shouted before spewing out black ink right towards the three. Zoro and Sanji immediately jumped out of the way, but Luffy, unable to move, bent as far back as he could. It wasn't enough though, and the ink got all over his face and clothes. You idiot, why didn't you dodge? Zoro asked from the ground. I can't see, Luffy shouted, trying to get the ink off his face. Now to finish you off, the octopus said as he moved to pick up a large piece of rubble the size of a small house. Oi, Luffy, run, Usopp shouted from where he was hiding behind a pillar. Yeah, that's the problem. I can't seem to move, Luffy told them, struggling to pull his feet out of the ground. Sure, he had plenty of strength to put them into the ground, but whenever he tried using that strength to pull them out, his legs stretched. Huh? Sanji deadpanned. My feet are stuck, Luffy reiterated, unable to see and unable to move. Thankfully, he didn't need his eyes to see, though, and his haki let him know of the advancing fishman getting closer with the large rubble. You're the one who stuck them in the ground, Usopp yelled fearfully, thinking this was going to be it for Luffy. Why does he have to be so? Zoro, who was face-palming, couldn't even finish his own sentence. Hachi Ink Jet on the rocks. With that announcement, the fishman slammed the rubble down onto Luffy, only for it to split in half. What a pain, Sanji muttered, legs still in the air from having kicked the rubble in two. Sanji, great, Luffy praised, arms in the air as he cheered. Seems have wound up following one hell of an idiot captain, Sanji noted with a smile. Agreed, Zoro said next. He's awesome, Usopp shouted in awe from where he was safely watching. But he's 100 times better than a damn gang that had hurt a lady. Sanji continued, thinking about Nami again. Lady, to think you'd bust in here just for that one lousy girl. You really know how to make us laugh, the fishman with the large pointed elbows said. Lousy girl? Just try and insult Nami-san one more time. I'll use a buttered frying pan to turn you into Munye, fishman, the chef said, taking his cigarette out of his mouth and pointing it towards the fishman in question. You seem somewhat skilled for a human. Any sort of chivalry from a pirate is obviously half-hearted, the fishman taunted. Go ahead and see if my chivalry is half-hearted or not. Sanji taunted right back, placing the cigarette back in his mouth. I was raised by an unbeatable pirate for half my life, he continued, taking a drag of the cigarette and grinning at the fishman. It appears you don't know the true level of the fishman species, the fishman said, moving into a stance that indicated he'd be fighting Sanji without weapons. While the two were talking, Usopp had moved towards Luffy and was now attempting to pull his captain out of the ground, only to have the same problem Luffy had when the teen only stretched. They're really stuck, Luffy said, unfazed by this. Still, they're still stuck? Usopp asked, struggling to continue pulling Luffy. Yup, they're still stuck. I get the feeling just pulling me won't get them unstuck, Luffy said with a blank expression. Are you even trying? Are you even trying to pull your legs out? Usopp barked in Luffy's ear. What are they playing around in Arlong Park for? I'll kill them, the octopus fishman said, picking up one of the halves of the rubble from before, aiming right for Usopp and Luffy. Seeing this, the sniper screamed in fear, running and pulling Luffy with him. Hey, you, get unstuck already, Usopp shouted fearfully as he ran, Luffy under his arm. Get back here, the fishman yelled. Hey, octopus. They're busy right now. I'll take you on, Zoro said, pointing his sheathed sword to the fishman. Roronoa Zoro. Yeah, I forgot. How dare you trick me? He shouted, throwing the rubble down at Zoro. The swordsman quickly jumped out of the way, watching as the stone crumbled on the ground. Yeah, and you cut down tons of my brothers, the fishman continued, turning to face Zoro where he was landing. I'm not interested in these old stories. It doesn't matter what reasons you have for wanting to kill me. The situation's changed now. You're not trying to destroy us. We're trying to destroy you. As he spoke, Zoro unsheathed his sword, grinning in anticipation of a fight. Alright, Zoro. The octopus is all yours. Nice, Usopp praised from where he was standing, rubbing his sweating forehead with one arm and holding Luffy with the other. Not thinking, though, he used the arm holding Luffy to give Zoro a thumbs up, meaning Luffy went snapping back towards his feet. Luffy! Usopp screeched, watching as his captain flew away from him and right towards the last remaining fishman. Said fishman only had a second to look over and see Luffy coming his way before the rubber team barreled into him, sending him flying into the wall like Arlong. I'm back. Luffy noted, his body swinging back and forth as he steadied himself again. Why, you? The fishman who was now sitting up glared in Luffy and Usopp's direction. My bad. Usopp cried, tears streaming down his face. Seems you really do want me to kill you. It took all of 2 seconds for Usopp to react when he saw the fishman getting up, and just as fast as he realized it, he was running away. He screamed through the watching crowd, and Luffy watched as the fishman he'd accidentally knocked down ran after him. Luffy watched proudly when Usopp distracted the fishman from the people of Kokoyashi, instead goading the man to follow after him by hitting him in the face with an exploding star. You're all pathetic. Move. I'm sick of watching this, Arlong ordered as he stood up. Arlong-san. We asked you not to go on a rampage, the fishman with Sanji said. I won't, I just thought up a fun game, Arlong said, walking slowly forward and still grinning menacingly. Game? The octopus asked. Game? I'm gonna beat you up, Luffy yelled, pulling back his fist and sending it flying towards Arlong. The fishman dodged it, grabbing Luffy's arm before it could snap back to his body. Do you really think you can beat us? Arlong taunted confidently. So what if we do? Sanji asked. We do, stupid head. Let go, Luffy shouted, trying to pull his arm back. Sounds like he has something to say. Zoro noticed. They all watched as Arlong shoved his hand into the ground near Luffy's feet, pulling the entire stone out from the ground and holding Luffy still stuck in the stone in the air. People with devil fruit powers can't swim, though. Even people without powers would sink in this situation. Arlong laughed, looking up at Luffy, his murderous intent clear as day even without haki. He's gonna throw him into the sea? Zoro asked, beginning to freak out now. Gum pistol. Even though the dunk in the sea was imminent, Luffy didn't think about that as he shot out his free arm, punching towards Arlong's face. His haki yelled at him instantly, and without dwelling on it, the rubber team coated his arm in armament haki. It was just in time, because Arlong opened his mouth, chomping down on Luffy's now protected arm. When his teeth met the almost steely coating, they began crumbling from the force he'd used on them and Luffy was able to pull his arm back. Ah, what the? In his surprised stupor, Arlong dropped Luffy to the ground, the stone crumbling away from his feet as a result and freeing him. Phew, I really didn't want to go in the water, Luffy said, wiping his clothes off which were still covered in ink. Then stop getting yourself stuck, Zoro and Sanji barked angrily, Luffy feeling that their anger came from their worry. She, sorry, he apologized, not sounding sorry in the least. Damn you, Arlong growled, pulling out what remained of his teeth. They all watched in morbid fascination as the now toothless Arlong began to grow teeth again, an enraged look on his face. Do you know what the terrifying difference between you and me is? Arlong asked. Nose? Jaw? I'm stronger and you're weaker? Webs, Luffy said, pointing to the in-between of his fingers where Arlong had webs and he did not. Around him, everyone blinked, wondering if he was joking or not. Species. With a spike in rage, Arlong opened his jaw and attempted biting Luffy, which the teen allowed. Luffy, Zoro and Sanji screamed, wondering why he hadn't dodged, but once they saw Arlong recoiling again they realized there was nothing to be worried about. They all watched as the skin Arlong had bit, Luffy's neck, was covered in a shiny black covering that slowly disappeared. What in the? Sanji asked with wide eyes, not knowing what had happened. That won't work, Luffy said, stating the obvious for the fishman who had regrown yet another set of teeth. I don't care how strong you think you are. I've known plenty of fishmen, and all of them were much stronger than you were. One of my brothers is a fishman, and that's why I know beating you right now won't be a problem, Luffy said with a grin, irritating Arlong. Why? Because you could beat him, he growled. Luffy's grin widened. Nope. Never could. I know I can beat you because Namur always said fishmen who think they're stronger because they were born stronger never are, Luffy said, lowering into a fighting stance. With a guttural growl, Arlong charged forward again, but seemed to think better of biting Luffy and instead went for a punch that Luffy easily dodged. At once, the fight commenced. Zoro took on the octopus fishman while Sanji took on the one with the sharp elbows and Luffy had Arlong. Luffy continued dodging Arlong's attacks with practiced ease until he was up against a pillar. Ducking under another punch, Arlong destroyed the pillar, pleasing himself. This is the inherent power of a fishman, someone you claim to be weak in comparison to yourself, Arlong bragged as he turned to look at Luffy who ducked out of the way. Heaven discriminated against you humans and made you powerless creatures that bow before fishmen. You humans are inferior creatures. We were on a different level from the moment we were born. I'll show you. The real difference between you and me, Arlong boasted. Yeah, why don't you? No way I'll lose against a fishman like you. I am the man who'll be king of the pirates. Luffy shouted, shocking everyone listening. He noticed that he smelled Nami, seeing the redhead standing at the front of the crowd with wide eyes, his straw hat still on her head. Within seconds of her returning, a bloodied Usopp returned as well, obviously having been victorious in his fight. King of the pirates? Don't make me laugh. Can you inferior humans do something like crushing a pillar with your teeth? Arlong asked, picking up a stone from the ground and tossing it in the air as he spoke.
So what? Stop bragging over stuff like that. Luffy yelled, punching one of the pillars beside him and crumbling it like Arlong had done.
It's not like biting is the only way to break stone, Luffy told him, holding his fist in the air, ready to fight.
Alright, Luffy and Ikki. You sure told him. That's right. The outcome is the same. Johnny and Yosaku praised from the crowd.
That's beside the point. A stupid and weak species. That's what humans are. What can you do when you can't even swim in water? Arlong asked before charging again, beginning another onslaught of attacks. Luffy dodged them, stretching his arms out and grabbing two swords lying on the ground. Nothing, that's why I need help, Luffy laughed, smiling as he held the two swords in front of himself. Zoro and Sanji, who were in the midst of fighting, noticed this.
Huh, can he also use swords? Sanji asked. I don't know, Zoro said with a shrug, ducking under one of his opponent's swords.
It seemed Luffy didn't know, though, as he began wildly swinging the two swords at Arlong, missing every time. What are you doing? It looks like you're just swinging swords around. Arlong laughed, using his nose to block a sword, breaking it. If you're just playing around, I'm not going to join your little game, Arlong warned, but Luffy ignored him, swinging his last sword like a club. It had no effect as Arlong bit it, breaking it like he'd done the other. Enough of this nonsense, Arlong said with a grin, clearly thinking he had the upper hand. Clench your teeth, Luffy warned, clenching his fists. Arlong barely had time to do just that when Luffy punched him in the jaw again, the same spot he had before. As Arlong fell to the ground, his teeth shattered once more. I don't know how to use swords, you bastard, Luffy shouted at him. Huh? What's he saying that now for? Usopp asked from where he watched beside Nami. I don't know how to sail the oceans. I can't cook. I can't lie either, Luffy continued. Oh, Usopp said in offense, but he was ignored. I'm confident that I can't live without help, Luffy shouted to the fishman. Fully admitting how pathetic you are. You sure are honest. I bet your crew is bothered by having such an incompetent captain like you. I wonder why your crew tried so desperately to keep you safe. Someone like you without any pride has the caliber to be a captain. What on earth can you do? Arlong asked as he replaced his teeth for the third time. I can defeat you, Luffy announced loudly. Behind him, the crowd began cheering, supporting him, but Luffy and babble. You inferior species. I'm a shark. New teeth grow one after another. And they're stronger than the previous ones. So go ahead and keep knocking them out. As many times as needed. Arlong said, pulling out his own teeth now and letting them regrow. As many times as needed. This is a distinctive quality that heaven gave us. Are you starting to realize what a superior species the fishmen are? Arlong asked, now holding two sets of his own teeth in his hands, a new pair already regrown in his mouth. Tooth attack, Arlong shouted, before using the teeth in his hands to attack Luffy. It wasn't a problem, however, because like before Luffy used Haki to coat his skin, breaking the teeth. You may be able to keep growing teeth, but I can keep breaking them. I told you before, it's useless. Luffy said, watching as Arlong grew frustrated at his attack being nullified. What is this? A rubber body, yet my sharp teeth don't even puncture the skin, Arlong asked, letting his now broken teeth fall out of his hands. That doesn't matter. What does is your distinctive quality is powerless against me. I told you from the start, I'm gonna beat you up. Luffy said, grinning maniacally to Arlong. He was satisfied when he felt all the confidence from Arlong diminish slightly, a small spark of fear finally taking hold. Gum gum whip. Luffy shouted, swinging his foot into Arlong's side and sending him flying into his building. Luffy watched as Arlong disappeared inside, not bothering to follow since he could feel that the fishman wasn't unconscious yet and was still seething in anger. Around him, Sanji and Zoro were finishing up their fights, the two having won with only minor injuries. Did you beat Arlong yet, or what? Zoro asked, panting from exertion. Nah, he's still awake. I think he's just lazy, Luffy said, wondering what was taking the fishman so long. Lazy? Arlong's growl asked as he finally stepped out from the building. When he was back outside, his eyes took in the scene of the two downed fishmen, leaving only Arlong. Chu, then Hachi, and finally Karubi. All of my brothers. Arlong growled lowly, eyes becoming bloodshot with his rage. Without looking, Arlong smashed his hand through the wall beside him, pulling something out. What the heck is that? Luffy asked. Kiribachi. Nami uttered in stunned fear. She moved a hand to her mouth, eyes wide as she took in the giant sword like saw. Not saying anything, Arlong ready to swing, but before it could hit Luffy, the rubbery teen jumped up onto the roof of Arlong Park. Sanji and Zoro, not wanting to get him in the crossfire, made their way over to Nami and Usopp, watching from a safe distance with everyone else. Like before, Arlong attacked with a fury, one after another, but Luffy continued to dodge them, remaining untouched as he slowly made his way up Arlong Park. Before he could climb up the roof of the highest point, he was forced to dodge quickly and as a result, fell into the room. You can no longer jump. You can no longer escape. This is the top floor of Arlong Park. Looks like your final moment is finally here. Arlong said, grinning ferociously, eyes slitted with anger and still bloodshot. What's this room, full of papers? Luffy asked, not taking notice of the imminent danger he was in as he looked at the many large stacks of paper. These are not just ordinary papers. This is a room where I make that woman continue to draw sea charts. These are all sea charts that Nami drew. Aren't they great? They're my treasure, one that I made her draw for 8 years. To us, getting data about the oceans is very simple, but it's a different story when we have to create sea charts based on it. We need a talented surveyor. That's why I had my eye on that woman. Arlong said, his greed nearly overriding his anger in that moment. She's good. She draws quite accurate sea charts. She's too good for you inferior humans. In the past as well as in the future, her talent should be used for us fishmen. Nami is our friend. Arlong continued greedily, smile widening. Friend? Luffy asked, having surveyed the room while Arlong was speaking. He'd never felt anything but living creatures have emotions, with the exception of that devil fruit. But being in this room, he could practically feel the pain and misery it held as if it was a person. So don't interfere anymore. You damn demon kid, the fishman said, holding his saw out at Luffy's face. What's that look in your eyes? Arlong asked, noticing the glare Luffy was sending his way. She is. Nami is. Our navigator, Luffy said firmly, glare hardening. You plan to make her the navigator of some shabby boat? You'd only end up wasting her talent. Just look, how many people in this world can draw such accurate charts? The girl has a gift. As Arlong continued talking, Luffy noticed a pen falling to the ground and stretched out his hand to grab it, flipping it over in his hands.
There's nothing as unfortunate and foolish as letting a natural-born talent go to waste. Staying here and drawing sea charts is the greatest happiness for her. Luffy knew the fish man's words were lies. Ever since he'd met Nami, she'd felt nothing but constant fear and anxiety. Sure, sometimes that had been because of him, but it had always been there, even when she had started warming up to him. He knew that the last place she would want to be was back in this room.
This pen is stained with blood, Luffy said in a low voice, but was ignored. Nami's sea charts are absolutely vital if I'm to attain world supremacy. The saw Arlong held was moved so that Luffy's neck was in between two of its blades, but still Luffy didn't move. His head was down, expression shadowed by his hair as he continued looking at the bloody pen. She's going to continue drawing sea charts, for my ambition, and once her charts give me full knowledge of all the world's seas. We fishmen will be invincible, and the world will become our empire. Our first stepping stone is this island. And the East Blue. Could you use the girl as efficiently as that? Luffy's grip on the pen tightened momentarily before he carefully put it down. Arlong's words reminded him far too much of the doctors back in the facility, all feeling as if they owned the lives of the children they'd stolen. The arrogance and pompousness irritated Luffy beyond words, and he was only just barely able to control his rage as he grabbed one of Arlong's saw's spike, holding it in place. He could feel Arlong try to move it, but it didn't budge an inch. Without warning, the blade Luffy held shattered into pieces, shocking the fishman. Use? What do you take her for? Luffy demanded, raising his head to show Arlong his enraged features. The fishman very nearly stumbled back from the intensity of the glare he was receiving, but steeled himself. An inferior creature, but a smart girl. If all other humans are sewer rats, I'd say she's a cheeky as hell cat. After all, she is adorable. And I'm going to keep on feeding her and buying clothes she likes. She'll have everything she needs to live. All she needs to do is keep drawing charts for me. She will forever be my tool. No, my friend, Arlong said, his tone low and dangerous. Finally, Luffy had had it. The more Arlong spoke, the more he sounded like the doctors, and it was all just too much. Without warning, Luffy kicked the nearby desk through the wall, sending it flying down to the ground below. Without wasting another second, Luffy moved onto the bookcases next, kicking those outside as well. What do you think you're doing? One after another, Luffy sent furniture item after furniture item flying out of the room. This place may not look like a cell. It may have nice furniture, windows, and heat, but a cell is a cell whether it's dolled up or not. Luffy knew if he could, he would destroy his own cell from all that time ago, and destroying Nami's now was a bit cathartic for him. Stop it, Arlong roared, swinging his kiribachi at Luffy, only for the teen to dodge. As a result, Arlong sliced a stack of charts in half, widened in shock. The charts, he gasped. Seeing that the fishman was preoccupied, Luffy took the chance to knock stacks upon stacks of the paper out of the room. My charts. Damn you. I spent 8 years making her draw those, Arlong roared, trying to grab Luffy only to miss again. I invested 8 years in those charts, in my ambition. Now that the room was empty, Luffy finally stopped dodging and stood face to face with Arlong. Fist held tightly, Luffy let his arms stretch out behind him, channeling all of his rage into it. You've gone too far, 11,097. Arlong roared, raising his kirabachi. Fishmen are great in sea charts this and circumstances that. I don't know much about that stuff. But I finally figured out how to save her. She can't go because this room is here. If she doesn't want to be here, then I'll just destroy it all. And you with it? Luffy shouted, sending his fist forward and getting another good punch in on Arlong, dodging the saw as it swung down towards him. Before Arlong could get up to retaliate, Luffy kicked his foot into the air, letting it smash through the roof and continue high into the sky. Gum gum. Don't get cocky. Arlong Park can't ever be brought down by you inferior beings.
Battle axe. Slamming his foot down, Luffy hit Arlong in the chest, pushing him down floor after floor through Arlong Park and leaving him in a crater at the very bottom. With that, the fishman's emotions muted and Luffy knew he had won. He didn't have a chance to celebrate his victory however, because the building suddenly began shaking, stone and wood falling as it became unstable.
Luffy wasn't worried though and let himself get caught up in the destruction. Rocks and wood fell on him, but it had no effect. He felt himself falling, felt the rubble settling around him, and once the loud commotion was finally gone, he could hear the silence outside. With the building done falling, Luffy stood from the debris, ink still covering his face and clothes and now dusty and dirty from the building crashing down, yet he had not a scratch on him. Luffy, big bro. He heard the cheers from the crowd, but he couldn't move to respond yet, still trying to calm down from the rage he had felt. Nami, he finally yelled, everyone silencing. You're my nakama. At his words, he could feel the stunned surprise in them all. Nami's emotions flooded over to him, her gratitude, her happiness, and her awe. He won. Arlong Park has fallen.